Most people check a motel room for clean sheets. Maybe the lock, maybe the bathroom, maybe the window, but almost nobody checks if the room is truly empty. And in the places you only stop at because you are tired, because it is raining, because you just need one cheap room for one night, that mistake can follow you home. Comment your location and the time you are watching from. Then lock the door and listen carefully. I only stopped because the rain got too heavy. That was what I kept telling myself later. I had been driving for almost 6 hours by then. Somewhere in southern Missouri, maybe 20 minutes past the last real town. The highway had gone dark except for truck headlights and the occasional gas station sign sitting low in the trees. I was tired enough that the white lines were starting to blur together. My phone was down to 8%. The charger in my car had stopped working sometime after midnight. So when I saw the motel sign, I took the exit without thinking much about it. It was the kind of place you only notice when you need it. One floor, outside doors, ice machine near the office, a soda machine humming under a yellow light. The sign said vacancy in red neon, but the V kept flickering off, so half the time it just said, "Can-see." There were only 3 cars in the lot, one pickup near the office, one old sedan with a tarp over the back window, and mine. I parked under the overhang and ran inside with my jacket over my head. The lobby smelled like wet carpet and old coffee. A small bell sat on the counter, but before I could touch it, a woman came out from the back room. She was older, maybe late 60s, thin, gray hair pulled tight behind her head. She did not ask for much. Name, ID, cash or card. I gave her my card and asked for the cheapest room she had. She slid a key across the counter. Not a key card, an actual brass key with a plastic tag. Room 109. She said it was around the side, last door before the vending machines. Then she looked past me toward the glass door and the rain outside, and she said, "Lock it behind you." I thought she meant the room, so I nodded. Room 109 was exactly what I expected. Brown carpet, one queen bed, a nightstand with a scratched lamp, a TV mounted crooked on the wall. The air conditioner under the window rattled, like something was loose inside it, but it was dry. That was enough. I locked the door, turned the deadbolt, slid the chain into place. Then I dropped my duffel bag beside the bed and stood there for a second listening to the rain hit the parking lot outside. The room felt cold, not air-conditioned cold, more like the door had been open for too long before I arrived. I told myself housekeeping had probably left it that way. I took off my wet jacket and went to the bathroom to hang it over the shower rod. That was when I saw the towel. It was hanging on the metal bar beside the sink. White towel, folded once, soaking wet, not damp, not like humidity had gotten to it, wet, heavy at the bottom. A small line of water had already run down the wall beneath it and collected on the tile floor. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I touched it with 2 fingers. Cold water pressed out of the fabric. Fresh. I looked at the sink. There were tiny drops of water around the drain. The mirror above it had a light fog across the bottom edge, like someone had breathed on it recently. I remember standing there in that cheap motel bathroom still holding my wet jacket. And for the first time that night, I forgot how tired I was. I almost went back to the office right then. I had my hand on the door. Then the rain hit harder. It came down in one thick sheet across the parking lot, loud enough that I could barely hear the air conditioner rattling behind me. I looked at the towel again, then at my duffel bag, then at the bed. I was exhausted. That is the part people never understand when you tell them something like this. They always imagine themselves alert, clear-headed, ready to leave the second anything feels wrong. But at 1 in the morning, after 6 hours on the highway, with wet shoes and a dead phone, your brain starts making deals. Maybe housekeeping missed it. Maybe the last guest used it and they forgot to replace it. Maybe the fog on the mirror was from the heat in the room. Maybe old motel plumbing did weird things. I told myself all of that. Then I took the towel off the bar and dropped it in the bathtub. It landed with a wet slap. That sound made me pause. Not because it was loud, because it sounded too recent, like someone had just finished using it. I washed my hands at the sink, mostly out of habit, mostly because I wanted to do something normal. The water came out brown for half a second, then clear. Beside the faucet was a small wrapped bar of soap. At least it had been wrapped. The paper had been opened carefully along one side, then pressed closed again as if someone wanted it to look untouched. I picked it up. The soap inside was wet. There was a shallow thumbprint in it. I put it back down. After that, I noticed the paper cup. It sat upside down beside the sink the way motel cups usually do, but the rim was bent in slightly on one side. When I turned it over, there was a little half circle of water inside. I remember feeling embarrassed. That sounds strange, but it is true. I felt embarrassed standing there inspecting a paper cup like I was trying to solve something. So I stopped. I went back into the room and picked up the phone on the nightstand. There was a yellowed card taped beside it. Front desk 0. I pressed 0. The phone rang 5 times. Then the same older woman answered. I told her the bathroom looked like someone had used it. There was silence on the line. Not surprise, not confusion, just silence. Then she said, "That room was cleaned this afternoon." I asked if anyone had checked in before me. She said no. I asked if she had another room. She said there was one, room 103, but the heat did not work. I looked over at the window. Rainwater was running down the glass in crooked lines. My car was parked under a weak security light, and the lot beyond it looked completely black. "How bad is the heat?" I asked. The woman said, "Bad enough." I waited for her to offer something else. She did not, so I said I would stay where I was. Before I hung up, she said one more thing. "Use the chain." I looked at the door. The chain was already on. "I did," I said, but she had already hung up. For a while, I just stood there with the receiver in my hand. Then I checked the door again. Deadbolt, chain, handle lock, all closed. I pushed my duffel bag in front of it anyway. Then I went back to the bathroom and pulled the shower curtain open. Nothing, just a stained tub, a rusted drain, the wet towel lying in a heap where I had dropped it. I shut the bathroom door. Then I changed into dry clothes and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were cold, too cold, like no one had slept there, or like someone had been lying there very recently and had just gotten up. I turned on the TV for noise. The screen came on to a weather channel. A man in a blue suit stood in front of a radar map talking silently because the volume was all the way down. I found the remote on the nightstand and turned it up. Static cracked through the speaker first. Then his voice came in. Heavy rain overnight, low visibility. Drivers advised to stay off the road. That settled it. I was not leaving. I set an alarm on my phone even though the battery was almost dead. Then I plugged it into the useless charger just in case it decided to work again. It did not. The screen stayed at 6%. I turned off the lamp. The room went dark except for the TV. Blue light moved across the ceiling. I lay there with my jacket folded under my head because I did not fully trust the pillow. For maybe 10 minutes I listened to the rain, then the air conditioner, then the TV, and under all of it, very faint, from behind the closed bathroom door, I heard one slow drop of water hit the tile, then another, then another. I do not know when I fell asleep. I remember trying not to. That was the strange part. I was lying there with the TV on low, watching blue light move across the ceiling, telling myself I would stay awake until the rain slowed down. I kept my shoes beside the bed. I kept my jacket folded under my head. I kept looking at the door to make sure the chain was still in place. At some point, the weather channel became a blur. Then I opened my eyes. The room was darker than before. The TV was still on, but the picture had frozen on a radar map. Green and yellow bands of rain sat over the middle of the screen. No voice came from the speaker anymore, just a low electric hum. For a few seconds I did not move. I was trying to understand what had woken me. Then I heard it. Water, not rain outside, not pipes in the wall. A single drop hitting tile, then another, then another. It was coming from the bathroom. The door was not fully closed anymore. I knew I had closed it. I remembered doing it because I did not want to look at the towel in the tub. I had pulled the door until the latch clicked. I had even checked it once from the bed because the room felt better with that door shut. Now it was open by maybe 3 inches, just enough to show a thin black line. I sat up slowly. The air in the room felt colder. The blanket had slipped off my legs, though I did not remember kicking it away. I looked at the front door first. The duffel bag was still pushed against it. The chain was still on. The deadbolt was still turned. That should have helped. It did not. The dripping continued, slow, patient. I reached for the lamp on the nightstand and clicked it on. Nothing happened. I clicked again. The bulb gave one weak flash, then went out. I sat there in the half-light from the frozen TV, staring at the bathroom door. I wanted to call the front desk again, but my phone was dead on the nightstand. The motel phone was beside it, old and beige, but the receiver gave no dial tone when I picked it up. Just a flat silence. I put it back carefully, like making noise would make things worse. Then I stood. The carpet felt damp under my socks. Not soaked, just slightly wet in a line from the bathroom to the foot of the bed. That was the first moment I really felt afraid, because water does not move across carpet in a narrow line unless something carries it. I walked to the bathroom door and pushed it open with 2 fingers. The light inside was off. I reached around the frame and flipped the switch. The bathroom filled with yellow light. No one was there. The towel was still in the tub, but it was not where I had left it. I had dropped it near the drain in a wet heap. Now it was folded over the edge of the bathtub. Not neatly, not like housekeeping, more like someone had picked it up, wrung it once and hung it there to dry. Water dripped from one corner onto the tile. That was the sound. I stepped closer. The sink was wet again. There was water around the faucet, fresh enough to reflect the light. The soap wrapper had been opened all the way now. The little bar sat beside it with a deeper thumbprint pressed into the center. I looked at the mirror. The fog was back. Only this time it was not across the bottom edge. It covered the whole glass. I touched it. Cold. Not warm steam. Cold fog. Then I noticed the remote. It was sitting beside the sink. The TV remote? I turned and looked back into the room. The nightstand was empty. I had used that remote before I lay down. I remembered setting it beside the lamp. Now it was in the bathroom, right beside the wet soap. I picked it up, then dropped it almost immediately. It was wet. Not splashed. Wet all over. Like someone had held it under running water. I backed out of the bathroom and shut the door hard. The latch caught. I stood there breathing through my mouth, listening. For several seconds there was nothing. Then from the other side of the closed bathroom door, I heard a slow breath. Not mine, not the air conditioner, a breath, close to the door, as if someone was standing just behind it, waiting for me to open it again. I did not move at first. I sat there on the edge of the bed with the TV light flashing across the wall, listening to the bathroom. The sound had not been loud. That was what made it worse. If someone had shouted or knocked or slammed something, I think I would have reacted faster. I would have grabbed my bag and gone straight out into the rain. But it was just breathing, one slow inhale, then silence. The kind of sound you almost want to believe you imagined. I turned the TV volume down. The weatherman's voice faded until I could hear the rain again. The air conditioner. The soft buzz from the lamp, even though it was turned off. And then, another breath. This one was closer to the door. I stood up. The room felt colder than before. I remember picking up the TV remote like it was going to help me somehow. Then I put it back down because that made me feel stupid. I said hello. My voice sounded small in that room. Nothing answered. I walked to the bathroom door. It was still closed. I had closed it myself. I knew that, but the bottom edge of the door was dark now, like the bathroom light had gone out. I could have sworn I had left it on. I reached for the knob, then stopped. There was water under the door. Not a lot. Just a thin line creeping across the tile and onto the carpet. I watched it spread slowly. It touched the toe of my sock. Cold. That was enough to snap me out of whatever frozen state I had been in. I backed away and grabbed my jacket from the chair. My keys were supposed to be in the right pocket. They were not there. I checked the left pocket. Nothing. I checked my jeans. Nothing. Then I checked the nightstand, the bed, the floor near my duffel bag. Nothing. I remember whispering, no, 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 over and over like that would make them appear. I had driven all night. I had come in with the keys. I had locked the car myself. There was no reason they should have been anywhere else. Behind me, the bathroom door clicked, just once. Not opening, not closing. Just the sound of a latch settling into place. I turned around. The water had reached the carpet now. The bathroom door was still shut, but the knob was wet, not splashed, wet, as if someone inside had grabbed it with a soaked hand. I went to the room door instead. I undid the chain first, slowly, trying not to make noise, which was ridiculous because if there was someone in that bathroom, they already knew I was there. Then the deadbolt, then the handle lock. I opened the door. Rain blew in sideways. The parking lot was empty except for my car and the old sedan with the tarp. The motel office light was off now. The vacancy sign buzzed red against the wet pavement. I stepped outside barefoot. The concrete was freezing. I did not care. I ran to the office and tried the door. Locked. I rang the bell mounted beside the window. No answer. I looked through the glass. The lobby was dark. The coffee pot was gone from the counter. So was the little bell. For a second it looked like a different place than the one I had walked into an hour earlier. I went back to room 109 because I had no phone, no keys, and nowhere else to go. The door was open, not wide, just enough that the chain hung loose against the frame. I knew I had closed it behind me. I knew it. Inside, the TV was off. The room was dark. Only the bathroom light was on now. A thin yellow line showed under the door. I stood outside in the rain, staring into that room, trying to make myself go in. Then I saw my car keys. They were on the carpet, halfway between the bed and the bathroom, laid out neatly, like someone had placed them there for me to find. I stepped inside. I picked them up. They were wet, not from rain. They smelled like motel soap. The bathroom door opened an inch. I did not wait to see more. I ran. I do not remember driving out of the lot clearly. I remember the rain on the windshield. I remember my bare feet on the pedals. I remember fumbling with the key because my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped it once between the seat and the console. Then the engine started, and I pulled out of that motel like I had stolen something. For about 10 minutes, I drove with no direction. I just followed the highway until the motel sign disappeared behind me. My phone died before I could check the map, so I kept going until I saw lights ahead. A gas station, not a big one, just 2 pumps, a small store, and a diner sign next door that had not been turned on yet. I parked under the canopy and sat there until the rain slowed. Only then did I look down at myself. No shoes, wet socks, t-shirt stuck to my back, jacket still in the motel room, duffel bag still beside the bed. The only things I had were my wallet, my keys, and the motel key still sitting in the cup holder. Room 109. I stared at that key for a long time. The plastic tag was old and yellow, with the numbers written in black marker, not printed, written. The edges were worn smooth from years of being handled. I wanted to throw it away. Instead, I put it in my pocket and went inside the gas station. The clerk was a young guy wearing earbuds. He barely looked at me until I asked if I could use the phone. Then he looked at my socks. I told him I had a bad night at the motel down the road. He pulled one earbud out. What motel? I told him the name. He made a face. Not scared, just tired, like people had complained about that place before. He let me use the phone behind the counter. I called the motel office. It rang for almost a full minute. Then someone picked up. A man answered, not the woman from the night before. I said I had stayed in room 109 and needed my bag back. There was a pause. Then the man said, "We don't rent 109. I thought I had misheard him. I told him again. Room 109? Checked in after midnight. Older woman at the desk. Paid by card. Another pause. Then he asked for my name. I gave it to him. I heard him typing. Then paper moving. Then he said there was no charge under my name. No check-in. No record. I pulled the brass key from my pocket and looked at it while he talked. Room 109. Clear as anything? I asked if the room was empty. The man did not answer right away. Then he said that room's been out of service. I asked why. He said there had been a leak in the bathroom wall. Old pipes. Water damage. Nothing dramatic. Just an old motel problem. But his voice changed when he said it. He sounded like he was trying to keep the answer small. I asked if anyone worked the front desk at night. He said not anymore. After 11, they left keys in lockboxes for late check-ins. I told him about the woman, the gray hair, the way she came out from the back room before I touched the bell, the way she told me to lock it behind me. The man did not say anything for so long that I thought the line had gone dead. Then he said very quietly, "You need to bring that key back." I said I would not. He said, "Then throw it out somewhere far from here." That was the last thing he said before hanging up. I should have done it. I know that now. I should have dropped the key into a storm drain or left it in the gas station trash or thrown it out the window once I got back on the highway. But I did not. I was tired. I was cold. And part of me still wanted proof. So I kept it. I bought a cheap phone charger and a pair of socks from the gas station. Then I sat in my car until my phone had enough battery to pull up my bank app. There was no motel charge, nothing pending, nothing declined, nothing at all. By then the sky had started to turn gray. I drove back just after sunrise. I told myself I was only going for my bag. The motel looked smaller in daylight, worse somehow. The neon sign was off, the soda machine was quiet. The office window had a handwritten note taped inside. Back at 9, I parked near room 109. The old sedan with the tarp was gone. The pickup near the office was gone too. My jacket was folded on the curb outside my room. Dry, neatly folded. My duffel bag sat beside it, also dry. The door to room 109 was closed. A strip of yellow caution tape had been stretched across it. Not police tape, maintenance tape, the kind you buy at a hardware store. I did not go inside. I grabbed my things and walked back to the car. Before I got in, I looked toward the bathroom window. Then I remembered. There was no bathroom window. The bathroom was on the inside wall. Still, the curtain beside the front window moved, just slightly, like someone had pulled it back with 2 fingers. I drove away. I never went back. For years, I told myself the whole thing was exhaustion, bad weather, a bad motel, maybe some employee using empty rooms after hours, maybe someone living in the walls. Every explanation sounded stupid, but I held on to them anyway. Until last winter, I was cleaning out my glove box before selling that car. Old receipts, insurance cards, a broken flashlight, and under all of it, pushed deep into the back corner, I found the brass key. Room 109. The plastic tag was still yellow, still worn smooth. But the numbers were different. They did not say 109 anymore. They said 110, and the key was wet. The door between the rooms was not open, but it was not closed either. That was the first thing Megan noticed. I had already dropped our bags on the floor and was trying to get the heater to work. It was one of those old wall units under the window, the kind with cracked plastic buttons and a smell like burnt dust when it turned on. Outside, rain moved across the parking lot in waves. We had been driving since dinner. The plan was to make it home that night, but somewhere past Little Rock, the highway turned into a black sheet of water. Trucks kept throwing spray across the windshield. Megan had stopped talking almost an hour before that, which meant she was either asleep or too tired to pretend she was fine. So when we saw the motel sign off the exit ramp, I pulled in. It was cheap. That was the nicest thing I could say about it. One long building, outside doors, ice machine at the far end, a vending machine with half the lights burned out. The office had a hand-painted sign that said night window after 10 p.m. A man behind thick glass took my card and gave me a key card for room 114. He did not give us a receipt. He did not tell us where to park. He just pointed left and said end of the row. Room 114 was almost at the corner of the building. There was only one other car nearby, an older white SUV parked 2 rooms down with fogged windows and no plates on the front. I remember noticing that. Not because it scared me, just because it looked like one more thing wrong with the place. Inside, the room smelled like old cigarettes covered with lemon cleaner. The carpet was dark green. The bedspread had a pattern that looked like it had been chosen to hide stains. There was a small table by the window, 2 chairs, a TV, a microwave, and a connecting door on the wall beside the bathroom. I barely noticed it at first. Megan did. She was standing near the bed, holding her overnight bag against her chest. "Is that supposed to be like that?" she asked. I turned around. The connecting door was shut, mostly. A thin black line showed between the door and the frame. Not wide enough to see through clearly, just enough to know the latch had not caught. I walked over and pushed it with my palm. It moved maybe half an inch, then stopped. I pushed harder. Nothing. There was probably a deadbolt on the other side or furniture against it. "It's locked," I said. Megan did not look relieved. "Then why is it cracked?" I tried the knob. It turned a little, then stuck. Old door, old frame, cheap motel. That was the explanation I wanted, so I gave it to both of us. "These places settle weird," I said. "Probably just warped." She kept staring at the gap. The room on the other side was dark. At least it looked dark. But near the bottom of the door, right where the carpet met the frame, there was a very thin strip of light. Not bright, not steady, just enough to make the gap feel less empty. I told myself it was from the parking lot outside. Maybe light slipping through their curtains. Maybe a reflection. Megan set her bag down slowly. "Can you call the desk?" I did not want to. Not because I thought she was wrong. Because I was tired, and calling the front desk meant admitting the room already felt wrong. But I picked up the phone anyway. The plastic receiver was sticky against my hand. I pressed 0. It rang for a long time. Then the man from the office answered, breathing hard, like he had been asleep. I told him the connecting door in room 114 would not close all the way. There was a pause. Then he said, "It's locked from both sides." I looked at the gap again. "Is someone in the room next to us?" Another pause. "No," he said. "What room is that?" 115. "Is it rented?" Number. Megan was watching my face while I listened. I asked if we could move rooms. He said nothing for a few seconds. Then he said, "Not tonight," and hung up. I stood there with the phone still against my ear. The dial tone came back soft and flat. Megan said, "What did he say?" I put the receiver down. He said, "Nobody's in there." She looked at the connecting door. The thin line of light under it was still there. "Then why is there light?" I did not answer right away, because I did not have a good answer. I walked over to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to look outside. The parking lot light was on the far side of the building, too far to shine under that door. The rain made everything look smeared and blue. The white SUV was still 2 rooms down. No one was inside, at least not that I could see. I let the curtain fall back. "Maybe maintenance left a light on," I said. Megan gave me a look, the kind that meant she knew I did not believe myself. I tried the connecting door again. The knob turned a little, then stopped in the same place. I pushed my shoulder against the wood. It gave that same half inch, then held. It was not open. It was not closed. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I bent down and looked through the crack near the bottom. I could not see much. Just old carpet on the other side, a strip of yellow light, and something dark a few feet away. Maybe a chair leg, maybe a suitcase. I stood up quickly. What Megan asked? Nothing. I grabbed one of the chairs from the small table. It was heavier than it looked, with a metal frame and a cracked vinyl seat. I wedged it under the knob of the connecting door, then pushed it tight with my foot. The chair leaned at an awkward angle. It would not stop someone determined, but it would make noise. That was what I told myself. Noise was enough. Megan did not argue. She went to the bathroom and changed while I stood by the door listening. The room on the other side stayed quiet. No TV, no voices, no footsteps, just rain. When Megan came out, she had her sweatshirt on and her hair tied back. She looked smaller somehow, more awake than tired now. "I don't like this room," she said. "I don't either." "Then why are we staying?" I wanted to say because we were being rational, because people panic over dumb things when they are exhausted, because bad motels have bad doors. But the real answer was simpler, because it was after midnight, because the highway was flooded, because the man at the desk had already told us there were no other rooms, and because part of me still thought leaving would make us look ridiculous. That last one embarrasses me now. It is strange how often pride keeps people in bad places. I told her we would sleep a few hours and leave before sunrise. She did not like it, but she nodded. We left the bathroom light on, then the lamp, then the TV with the volume low, anything to make the room feel occupied. Megan took the side of the bed farthest from the connecting door. I took the side closest to it. That felt like the right thing to do. For a while, nothing happened. The heater clicked on and off. The rain softened. The TV played some late-night commercial for kitchen knives. I watched the blue light move across the ceiling and tried not to look at the chair under the door handle. I must have drifted off, not fully asleep, just in that shallow motel sleep where every sound still gets through. A truck passed on the highway. The heater clicked. Megan shifted beside me. Then came a sound from the connecting door. Not a knock, not a scrape, a slow pressure sound. Wood settling. The chair moved, only a little, a short drag across the carpet, maybe 2 inches. I opened my eyes. The room was dark except for the TV and the bathroom light. The chair was still under the knob, but it was no longer tight against the door. Megan whispered, "Did you hear that?" I did not move. The chair made the sound again. A soft scrape. This time I saw it move, just slightly, as if someone on the other side had opened the door as far as the chair would allow, then stopped. I sat up. The knob was still. The gap beside the door was black, but under the door, the yellow strip of light had gone out. For some reason, that scared me more, because now it felt like whoever was there had turned off the light to hide better. I reached for the lamp. My hand hit the shade first, then the switch. The room filled with weak yellow light. Megan sat up beside me, pulling the blanket to her chest. The chair was still under the knob, but it had moved, not much, just enough that the front legs had left 2 short lines in the carpet. I stared at those lines for a few seconds, trying to make them less clear than they were. Maybe the chair had slipped. Maybe I had not wedged it as tight as I thought. Maybe the old carpet made it slide. I got out of bed and crossed the room. The floor felt cold under my feet. The closer I got to the connecting door, the more I could smell something. Not smoke, not mildew, perfume, cheap perfume, the kind someone sprays too much of in a small room. It was coming through the crack. I stood in front of the door and listened. Nothing, no breathing, no movement, no TV from the other side. I bent down slowly and looked under the door. The strip of light was gone now. The room beyond was black, but there was still something there. A darker shape against the darkness, low to the floor, close to the door. I pulled back fast enough that my shoulder hit the wall. Megan said, "What is it?" I don't know. That was the truth. I did not know if I had seen a shoe, a bag, a person crouching, or nothing at all. I only knew there had been something there that made my body react before my mind could name it. Megan got out of bed. I told her not to come closer. She came anyway. We both stood there looking at the chair. Then the knob turned. very slowly, not far, just until the old metal clicked softly. The chair held. Megan grabbed my arm. I said, "Hey." My voice came out louder than I meant it to. The knob stopped. For 1 second, everything in the room went still. Even the heater seemed to stop. Then something touched the other side of the door. Not a hand slapping it, not someone pushing hard, more like fingertips resting against the wood. One soft tap, then another, then 3 more, not random, patient, like whoever was there had all night. Megan whispered, "Call the desk." I picked up the phone, pressed 0, nothing, no ring, no dial tone. I pressed it again, still nothing. The cord was plugged in. The phone looked fine, it just did not work anymore. I put it down carefully. I did not want the person behind the door to hear how badly my hands were shaking. Megan had already grabbed her bag. "We're leaving," she said. I nodded. There was no argument left in me. I picked up my jeans from the chair by the window and pulled my keys from the pocket. Then I heard another sound, a small scratching noise. It came from the connecting door. Low, near the knob. I looked back. A thin white line appeared in the black gap beside the frame. At first I thought it was light. Then I realized it was paper. Something was being pushed through the crack, slowly, carefully. Megan covered her mouth. The paper slid farther into our room, then dropped onto the carpet. I did not pick it up right away. I should not have picked it up at all, but I did. It was a Motel notepad page. The top had the motel name printed in faded blue letters. Below that, someone had written one sentence. "We thought this room was empty." I read it twice. Then I looked at Megan. Her face had gone flat and pale. Behind the connecting door, something dragged across the floor. Not the chair this time, something heavier, something on their side, moving away from the door. Then the yellow light under the door came back on. Only now the shadow beneath it was gone. That should have made me feel better. It did not, because the room on the other side was supposed to be empty, and someone over there had just written the word "we." We did not talk after that. The note stayed in my hand. We thought this room was empty. I kept looking at the word "we." Not I, not someone, we. Megan was already putting her shoes on. She did it without sitting down, one hand on the wall, her eyes fixed on the connecting door. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I wanted something physical to make the fear feel less stupid. The yellow strip of light under the connecting door stayed on. No shadow crossed it. No sound came from the other side. That did not calm me down. It made the room feel like it was waiting. I grabbed both bags. Megan took the car keys because she said my hands were shaking. She was right. We moved toward the main door. The chair was still wedged beneath the connecting doorknob, but now I noticed the back legs were raised slightly off the carpet. Not enough to fall, just enough to show pressure from the other side. Like the door had been pushed open and held there. I unlocked the main door. The rain had softened into a steady hiss. The parking lot was almost empty. Our car sat 2 spaces away. The old white SUV was still down the row, its windows dark and fogged from the inside. The office light was off. Only the vending machine at the end of the building glowed red. Megan started toward the car. I should have followed her. But room 115 was right there, one door over, the room that was supposed to be empty. I told Megan to wait by the car. She said my name in a sharp whisper. I told her I just wanted to check. It was a stupid thing to say. If someone was inside, I did not want to know. And if no one was inside, that would not explain anything. Room 115 had the same brown door, same scratched brass numbers, same small window with the curtains pulled shut. A sign hung from the knob. "Do not disturb." Old white plastic, red letters. The kind motels used before they started printing paper ones. The man at the desk had said no one was in there. I leaned closer to the window. There was a thin gap where the curtain did not meet the wall. I looked through it. At first I saw only darkness. Then my eyes adjusted. The layout was the same as our room. Bed on the left, TV on the wall, small table by the window. And near the connecting door there was a chair, not blocking the door, not pushed under the knob, placed neatly in front of it, facing it, like someone had been sitting there, watching the crack between the rooms. Something dark rested on the cushion. For a second I thought it was a jacket. Then it shifted, only a little, but enough. I stepped back. The handle on room 115 I've moved down. Slowly, not opening all the way, just testing the latch. I ran. Megan had the passenger door open. I threw the bags into the back seat and got in so fast I hit my knee under the dash. She started the engine before I had my door closed. Then she froze. "My work bag," she said. I looked at her. "What?" "It's still inside." I almost told her to leave it. I should have, but her laptop was in there, her wallet, her medication. Real life has a cruel way of dragging you back into places fear already told you to leave. I told her I would get it. 10 seconds. Another stupid thing to say. I ran back through the rain. Inside room 114, the air felt different. Still. Too still. The chair was no longer under the connecting doorknob. It had been moved back to the small table by the window. Straightened, placed exactly where it had been when we first walked in. The connecting door was fully closed now. No crack, no strip of light, no sound. Megan's work bag sat on the bed, zipped shut. I grabbed it. As I turned to leave, I heard one soft sound behind me. A fingernail dragged along the other side of the connecting door. Slow, top to bottom, like someone was marking where the opening used to be. I did not look back. We did not talk after that, not while we grabbed our bags, not while Megan checked under the bed for her shoes, not while I stood beside the connecting door with my keys in one hand and the motel notepad in the other. The chair was back at the table. That was the part I could not make myself understand. It had not been knocked over. It had not been dragged across the room. It had been placed exactly where it was when we first walked in, tucked under the little round table by the window, like someone had cleaned up after us. The connecting door was fully closed now. No black line, no strip of light, no crack at the frame, just an old painted door sitting flat against the wall. That should have made it better. It did not. Megan zipped her bag with shaking hands. "Don't check it," she said. "I'm not." But I was looking at the knob. I wanted to know if it would still turn. I wanted to know if the chair had moved because someone had come through, or because something had opened the door from our side while we were outside. Megan said my name once, quietly. That was enough. I picked up both bags and walked to the front door. The rain had slowed to a mist. The parking lot was almost empty. The white SUV was gone. There were no headlights pulling away, no engine sound, just wet pavement and the buzzing red motel sign reflecting in the puddles. We got in the car. I did not turn around until we were already backing out. Megan was staring at room 115, the room next door. Its curtain was closed. The Do Not Disturb tag was still hanging from the knob, but the door was open a few inches, just enough to show darkness inside. I stopped the car. Megan grabbed my wrist. "Drive." So I did. We did not stop until we reached a 24-hour truck stop almost 30 miles away. By then the sun was beginning to come up. The whole thing had started to feel less real in the gray morning light. That happens. Fear needs darkness. Once you are sitting under fluorescent lights with coffee in a paper cup, your mind starts sanding down the edges. Megan cried in the bathroom for a while. I sat in the car and called the motel. A woman answered this time, not the man from the night window. She sounded older but not elderly, more annoyed than concerned. I told her we had checked into room 114 a few hours earlier. I told her the connecting door was open. I told her someone had been in room 115. She asked for my name. Then she asked me to repeat the room number. I did. 114. She put me on hold. The hold music was low and warped, like it was playing from a radio in another room. When she came back, her voice had changed. She said, "Room 115 is not rented." "I know what the guy told me," I said, "but someone was in there." She said, "Room 115 is not available." "Why?" Another pause. Then she said, "Maintenance issue." That was the phrase people use when they do not want to tell you anything. I asked about the Do Not Disturb tag. She said they did not use those anymore. I told her there was one on the door. She said nothing. I asked if we could come back for a refund. She said we could speak to the manager after 10. We did not go back. I threw the motel notepad page into a gas station trash can 2 counties later. Megan did not stop me. For the rest of the drive, she kept checking the back seat. Not dramatically. Just every few minutes, her eyes would move to the rearview mirror, then to the bags, then to the door locks. I thought she was still scared. I was too. But it was not until we got home that I understood what she was really doing. She opened her suitcase in the bedroom. Then she stepped back. There was nothing missing. No clothes taken. No wallet gone. No damage on the outside, but the inside lining had been scratched. One long line from the zipper to the bottom corner. Deep enough to tear the fabric. Like someone had opened the suitcase, reached inside, and dragged a fingernail down the lining. Megan started crying again. I told her maybe it had caught on something. She looked at me like she hated me for saying it. Then she reached under the torn lining and pulled something out. A small piece of Motel paper. Same faded blue logo. Same cheap notepad. Folded once. Inside there was only one thing written. 114. No message. No threat. No explanation. Just our room number. For a long time, neither of us moved. I think we both understood the same thing at once. Whatever had been on the other side of that connecting door had not just watched us. It had been close enough to open her bag, close enough to put something inside, close enough to make sure we carried part of that room home with us. I called the motel again that afternoon. The line had been disconnected. I looked it up online. The listing was still there. Same sign, same building, same cheap weekly rates. But every review from the past year said the same strange thing. Nobody could get room 115, no matter how full the motel was, no matter how many rooms were empty. They never rented 115. One review mentioned room 114. It was from a trucker passing through in winter. He only wrote 2 sentences. I left after 20 minutes. The door next to mine kept breathing. I closed the laptop after that. Megan and I never talked about that motel again. Not properly. But for months after, she kept a chair in front of our bedroom door. Not because she thought it would stop anyone. I think she just wanted to hear it move. I was not supposed to stop that night. That was the first thing I kept coming back to later. I had a meeting in Oklahoma City the next morning, and my plan was simple. Drive until I got close enough, find a decent hotel near the office park, sleep for 5 hours, then pretend I was not exhausted during the presentation. But the rain changed that. It started somewhere west of Tulsa, light at first, then heavy enough that every passing truck threw water across my windshield like a curtain. The lane markers disappeared and came back in pieces. My wipers could not keep up. By the time I saw the motel sign, I had both hands tight on the wheel. The sign was low to the ground, half hidden behind a closed diner and a row of wet shrubs. Vacancy, color TV, weekly rates. It looked old but not abandoned. There were a few cars in the lot, 2 work trucks, a silver minivan, one 18-wheeler parked along the back fence with its cab dark. That was enough for me. I pulled in. The office was a small square room attached to the front of the building. It smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. A little TV sat behind the counter with the volume turned down. On the screen, a local weather map showed a green and yellow storm line crawling across the state. The clerk was a man in his 40s with tired eyes and a red polo shirt. He barely looked up when I came in. I asked for one room, just one night. He asked for my ID and card, then typed with 2 fingers on an old computer that looked too slow to still be in use. For a moment, he frowned at the screen. Then he wrote something on a paper sleeve and slid a key card across the counter. 214, he said. I picked it up. The sleeve had another number under it, something written in black pen then crossed out hard enough to tear the paper a little. I thought it said 211, but I was too tired to ask. Room 214 was on the 2nd floor near the far stairwell. I carried my overnight bag through the rain, up the metal steps, and along the covered walkway. Halfway there, I passed the vending area. A soda machine hummed beside a snack machine with most of its lights out. Next to them was the ice machine. A sheet of printer paper had been taped across the front. Out of order. The paper was damp at the corners. I remember noticing it only because I wanted ice water. My throat was dry from coffee and driving, so I kept walking. Room 214 opened on the first try. Inside, the air was cold and still. Not dirty, not clean either. Just old. A bed with a brown comforter. A small table. A TV bolted to the dresser. A lamp that flickered twice before staying on. I locked the door behind me. Deadbolt, chain, habit. Then I set my bag on the chair and stood there listening to the rain hit the walkway outside. For the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. That was when I saw the ice bucket. It was sitting on the table beside the TV. Pale blue plastic, the kind motels used before everything became black trays and wrapped cups. The handle had a crack near one side. At first I thought nothing of it. Then I picked it up to move it. Ice shifted inside. Not a lot. Just enough to rattle against the plastic. I stood there holding it. Then I looked back toward the door. Toward the walkway. Toward the vending area I had passed less than a minute earlier. The ice machine was out of order. I lifted the lid. Cold air touched my face. There were maybe 8 or 9 cubes inside. Clear at the edges, wet but not melted down. Fresh enough that they still held their shape. At the bottom of the bucket under the ice, something white was folded against the plastic. A piece of paper. The ink on it had begun to bleed. I did not touch it yet. I only stood there in that cold motel room, holding a bucket I had not filled, listening to the ice crack softly as it melted. And for some reason I had the very clear feeling that the room had been ready before I got there. I set the bucket back down on the table, carefully, as if moving too fast would make whatever was happening become real. For a few seconds I just stood there and listened. Rain outside, the low buzz of the lamp, a faint hum from the air conditioner under the window. No footsteps, no voices, no one in the bathroom, no one behind the curtains. I checked anyway. That is what tired people do when they are scared. They check the obvious places first, because they want the answer to be obvious. I pulled back the shower curtain. Empty tub. I opened the closet. 2 wire hangers and an ironing board with a burn mark down the middle. I looked behind the curtain by the window. Nothing but wet glass and the second floor walkway outside. The room was empty, or it looked empty. I went back to the table. The ice bucket sat exactly where I had left it. Pale blue plastic. Old motel logo worn almost completely off the side. The cracked handle leaned slightly lower on the right, like it had been pulled too hard once and never sat straight again. There were small drops of water forming around its base. I told myself a guest before me must have filled it earlier. Maybe housekeeping forgot to dump it. Maybe the clerk had given me a room too soon. Maybe the out of order sign was old. Those explanations were ugly, but they were normal. I wanted normal. So I picked up the room phone and called the front desk. The clerk answered after the 3rd ring. Office. I asked if there was another ice machine on the property. He said no, just the one by the vending machines. I told him the sign said it was broken. It is, he said. For how long? He sighed like I had asked something unreasonable. Since this morning. I looked at the bucket. A cube cracked softly inside it. The sound was small, sharp, fresh. So there's no way to get ice right now? I asked. Some guests bring coolers, he said. I looked around the room. No cooler. No trash from another guest. No wet footprints. No open soda can. Nothing that belonged to anyone else. Did someone stay in this room before me tonight? I asked. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. No, he said. You just checked in. Mao, you just checked in. I waited for him to add something. He did not. I said there was ice already in here. Another pause. Then he said housekeeping probably missed it. Housekeeping missed ice. They miss things. His tone made it clear the conversation was over. Before he hung up, I heard a faint sound behind him. A printer, or maybe paper being torn. Then the line clicked dead. I stood there with the receiver still in my hand. The room felt colder than before. I put the phone down and looked at the bucket again. The folded paper was still under the ice. I did not want to touch it. That sounds dramatic now, but it is true. There was something about that small piece of paper sitting under those half-melted cubes that felt deliberate, not forgotten, placed. I went to the bathroom and grabbed a washcloth. Then I used it to scoop the ice toward one side of the bucket. Cold water soaked through the cloth almost immediately. The paper slid into view. It was folded once, white but soft from the water. The edges had started to break apart. On the outside, written in blue ink, was my room number, 214. I stared at it. There was no message, no name, just the number. The handwriting was careful, small, almost neat. Not the fast scribble of a housekeeper marking a room. Not the lazy handwriting of someone leaving trash behind. I unfolded it with the edge of the washcloth. Inside, the same number was written again. 214. Nothing else. No joke. No warning. No explanation. I looked at the key sleeve on the dresser, the one the clerk had handed me. 214 was written there too. Over the crossed out number, I picked up the sleeve and held it under the lamp. The number underneath was clearer now, 211. It had been written first, then scratched out, then replaced. I told myself it was a room change. That happened. Hotels changed rooms all the time, but the paper in the bucket did not feel like a room change. It felt like someone had known which room I would end up in. I took the bucket to the door. I do not know why. Maybe I thought if I dumped the ice outside, the problem would become trash. Something wet on concrete. Something simple. I opened the door and stepped onto the walkway. Rain blew in under the awning. The vending area was only a few doors down. The ice machine sat there with the out-of-order sign taped across it. As I walked toward it, the machine made a sound, a hollow clunk, then another, like ice dropping into an empty bin. I stopped. The paper sign trembled slightly from the air moving around it. I stepped closer and lifted the metal flap. Inside the bin was empty, dry. Not just empty, dry enough that dust had collected in the corners. Behind me, back in room 214, something clicked softly. Not loud, just the sound of a door settling, or a latch catching. I turned around. My room door was still open. The yellow light from inside spilled across the wet walkway, and on the table visible through the open doorway, the pale blue ice bucket was sitting where it had been before. I looked down at my hands. They were empty. I stood outside my own room for a few seconds. Rain blew across the walkway and hit the side of my face. I looked at my hands again. Empty. No bucket, no washcloth, no paper. I had carried the bucket out. I knew I had. I remembered the cold plastic against my fingers, the weight of the ice inside, the way water had dripped from the bottom onto the walkway as I moved. But now it was back on the table, inside the room, exactly where I had first found it. I almost laughed, not because anything was funny, because my mind had reached for the only thing left that made sense. I was tired, that was all. Tired people forget things. Tired people misread numbers. Tired people carry something to the door, get distracted and leave it behind without realizing. I told myself that. Then I looked down at the walkway. There was a small trail of water leading from my room toward the vending area. Drops. Not many, but enough. They stopped halfway between my door and the ice machine, as if I had been carrying something wet. I backed into the room and shut the door. The lock sounded too loud. I slid the chain across. Then I stood with my back against the door, staring at the bucket. It was not full anymore. There were only a few pieces of ice in it. The paper was gone. That should have been better. It was worse, because now it felt like the room had corrected itself. I walked over slowly and lifted the lid. Cold air touched my hand. The bottom of the bucket was wet. Nothing else. No paper, no folded note, no sign of where it had gone. I checked the table, the floor, under the TV, behind the dresser. Nothing. I even checked the trash can, though I knew I had not thrown anything away. Empty. The only thing left was a wet ring on the table where the bucket had been sitting, a clean circle in the dust. That detail bothered me more than it should have. The room did not look filthy, but the table had a fine layer of gray dust on it, the kind old motel furniture gets when nobody wipes the corners properly. The ring was perfect, too perfect, like the bucket had been there for days, not minutes. I touched the circle, cold. Then I heard the ice machine again, from outside, one hollow clunk. Then another, then another. I went still. The sound came through the door clearly, not from the room next to mine, not from the pipes, from the vending area. I did not open the door this time. I stood there listening while the machine dropped ice into a bin I knew was dry. The sound went on for maybe 10 seconds, then stopped. The silence afterward felt arranged. I picked up the phone and called the office again. The clerk answered faster this time. Yeah, I said the ice machine was making noise. He did not respond. I said I had just checked it and it was empty. Still nothing. Then he said, "Don't mess with it." It was the first thing he had said that did not sound bored. "What the machine," he said. "Just leave it alone." That was when I stopped thinking of him as annoyed. He was not annoyed. He was trying not to be involved. I asked if someone had been in my room. He said, "No one's been in your room? You sure about that?" He exhaled through his nose. "You want another room?" I said yes, before he finished the question. There was typing, slow, hard keys. Then he said, "I can move you to 211. I looked at the paper sleeve on the dresser, the crossed out number, 211. For a moment I did not answer. The clerk said, "Ma'am, I asked why 211 had been crossed out on my sleeve." Another pause. This one was longer. Then he said, "Computer probably changed it, from 211 to 214. That happens." But his voice had gone flat. I looked at the bucket again. A bead of water slid down the full blue side and dropped onto the table. "Is 211 empty?" I asked. "It should be." That was not a good answer. I asked him what he meant. He said, "If you want the room, come get the key." Then he hung up. I did not move for a while. I kept looking at the door, then at the bucket, then at the key sleeve. 211 crossed out, 214 written over it. A normal mistake would have felt random. This did not. This felt like I had been sent to the wrong room by accident, and then something inside the wrong room had already known. I packed my bag, not neatly. I threw in my laptop charger, makeup pouch, clean shirt, everything I could see. I left my toothbrush on the sink because I did not want to go back into the bathroom. The bucket sat on the table while I moved around it. Quiet. Ordinary. That was the worst part. It looked harmless again. Just a cheap motel ice bucket with a cracked handle. I opened the door. The walkway was empty. The ice machine was silent now. But the out of order sign had changed. Not moved, not fallen. Changed. The paper was still taped to the front. The same damp corners. The same black marker. But now there was something written under the words, out of order. Small, blue ink, 214. I did not go closer. I did not need to. I knew the handwriting. Careful, small, almost neat. Behind me inside my room, the ice bucket made one soft cracking sound, like a cube splitting in half. I turned around. The lid was open. I had left it closed. The bucket was still on the table, but now there was more ice inside, enough to reach the top. Enough that I could see the cube shining under the lamp. And folded against the inside wall of the bucket, half buried beneath them, was another piece of white paper. This one was not soaked yet, not completely. I should have left then. I should have walked straight to the office or to my car or out into the rain. Instead, I stepped back into room 214 because the paper had writing on it. And even from the doorway, I could see that it did not say 214. It said 211. I did not touch the paper right away. I stood in the doorway with my bag strap cutting into my shoulder, looking at the number through the ice. 211. Not 214. Not my room. The room I was supposed to have before someone crossed it out. The bucket sat under the lamp like it belonged there. Pale blue, cracked handle, water running down the side in thin lines. I remember thinking that if I looked away and looked back, it might be empty again, or gone, or full of some new number I had not seen yet. But it stayed the same. I stepped into the room far enough to set my bag down. I hated myself for that. Every part of me knew I should leave. But there is a strange pull to things that make no sense. You want one clean answer, one detail that turns fear back into a mistake. I used 2 fingers to lift the paper from the bucket. The ice shifted around it with a soft cracking sound. The paper was folded once just like the first one, wet at the bottom, dry at the top. The ink had not bled yet. Inside, there was only the same number again, 211. No message, no name, no warning, just 211. I held it under the lamp and compared it to the number written on my key sleeve. Same blue ink, same careful handwriting, small letters, tight pressure. Whoever wrote it had not been rushing. That detail bothered me. Panic has messy handwriting. Anger does too. This looked calm. I put the paper on the table and grabbed the phone. I called the office again. This time, the clerk did not answer with office. He picked up and said, "Did you take the key?" I had not even asked for it yet. "What?" "Room 211, he said. "Did you come down?" "Number." A silence opened between us. I looked at the door. The chain was still on. The deadbolt was still turned. I had not left the room since talking to him. I told him that. He said nothing. Then I heard him set the phone down. Not hang up. Set it down. In the background there was movement. A chair scraping, papers sliding, a drawer opening too hard. When he came back, his voice was lower. "Your key for 211 is gone." I did not understand him at first. "What do you mean gone?" I put it on the counter. "I'm in 214. "I know." Another pause. Then he said, "Stay there." That was the worst thing he could have said. Because until then I had been telling myself he was lazy, annoyed, maybe hiding a housekeeping mistake. But the way he said "stay there" made it clear he did not want me in the hallway. I asked him what was going on. He said, "I'm coming up." The line clicked. I stood very still listening to the rain outside and the air conditioner under the window. For maybe 30 seconds nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps on the metal stairs at the end of the walkway. Heavy steps, fast then slower. I went to the peephole. The glass was scratched and cloudy, but I could see the clerk walking toward my room. He had a ring of keys in one hand and a flashlight in the other. His red polo looked darker in the rain. He stopped outside 214 and knocked once. Not loud, almost carefully. I opened the door with the chain still on. He looked past me into the room before he looked at my face. "Are you alone, Mr. Mao?" He's asked about it. That made my mouth go dry. Yes. He looked down the walkway toward the vending area, then toward the stairs, then back at me. Open it. I closed the door, slid the chain off, and opened it again. He stepped inside only far enough to look around. He did not cross the room. He did not touch the bucket. But I saw his eyes go to it right away. That told me he knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. I asked him if someone had been in the room before me. He said no one was supposed to be in this room. That was not the same answer. I asked why I had been given 214 if the sleeve said 211. He rubbed his forehead like he had a headache. The computer assigned 211, he said. Then it froze. When it came back, it printed 214. Printed, I said. You wrote it by hand. He looked at the sleeve on the dresser. For a second, he seemed confused. Then he picked it up and stared at it. I didn't write that. He said it too quickly. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he wanted to mean it. I pointed to the paper from the bucket. That was inside the ice. He did not pick it up. He leaned closer, read the number, then stepped back. Get your things, he said. I already did. Then we're moving you to 211. He did not answer. He walked to the door and looked out again. The walkway was empty. Rain ran off the roof in steady lines. The vending machines hummed at the far end. The ice machine sat dark under the damp out of order sign. Then it made a sound. One hollow drop. The clerk froze. Another clunk. Then another. His face changed in a way I still remember. It was not fear exactly. It was recognition. The look of someone hearing a noise he had hoped would not happen again. I said, "You hear that?" He nodded once. The sound stopped. Then from somewhere inside the room, ice shifted. Not outside, inside, on the table. We both turned. The bucket was no longer where it had been. It had moved maybe 6 inches closer to the edge. A small trail of water marked the table behind it. I had not touched it. He had not touched it. The clerk whispered something under his breath. I could not make it out. Then he took the room phone off the nightstand, unplugged the cord from the wall, and put the phone back down. I asked why he did that. He said because sometimes it rings. The room felt suddenly smaller. He told me to leave the key card on the table. I did. Then he told me not to take anything from the room that was not mine. I almost laughed at that because I wanted to say nothing in that room felt mine. But then I remembered the folded papers, the ice, the bucket, the number written before I arrived. I grabbed my bag and followed him out. At the door I looked back once. The ice bucket was still on the table. The lid was open. The paper marked 211 lay beside it, slowly soaking through. The clerk closed the door without touching the handle with his bare hand. He used the edge of his sleeve. Then he walked me down the stairs and across the parking lot toward the office. We did not speak until we were under the awning. I asked him if this had happened before. He looked at me, then at the second floor walkway behind us. Not to someone who came back to ask, he said. That was all. Inside the office, he took a new key card from behind the counter and slid it toward me. I looked at the sleeve. Room 211. I pushed it back. He did not seem surprised. I'll refund you, he said. I don't want a refund. I know. I asked for my receipt instead. He checked the computer, typed my last name, then typed it again. He looked at the screen for a long time. Finally, he said, You're not checked in. I told him that was impossible. He turned the monitor slightly just enough for me to see a blank reservation window. No name, no card, no charge, no room. Then the printer behind him started by itself. One page came out. He did not touch it at first. Neither did I. The paper curled in the tray, fresh and white, under the office light. At the top was the Motel logo. Under that, one line had printed, 214 occupied. The clerk reached over and turned the printer off. Then he looked at me and said, You should go now. I left without arguing. There are moments when your body understands something before your mind is willing to. Mine understood that staying in that office, asking more questions, trying to force an explanation out of that clerk would only make things worse. So I walked back through the rain to my car. My bag was on my shoulder. My laptop case was under one arm. My shoes were soaked through by the time I reached the driver's side. I got in and locked the doors. For a while, I just sat there. The windshield was covered in water. The motel office looked blurry through it. The clerk stood behind the glass watching me. He did not wave. He did not come outside. He just stood there with one hand resting near the printer like he was waiting for it to start again. Above him on the second floor walkway, room 214 was dark. I could see the door from where I parked. Closed. Still. Nothing strange about it. That almost made me angry. I wanted it to look wrong. I wanted the lights to flicker, or the door to open, or the ice machine to start making that hollow clunking sound again. Something obvious. Something I could point at and say, See? That is what happened. But there was nothing. Just a cheap motel in the rain. A tired clerk. A bad night. I started the car. Then I looked at the passenger seat. My makeup pouch was missing. It was a small black zipper bag. Nothing expensive. Toothbrush, contact case, travel deodorant, the kind of thing I could replace at any gas station. But I knew where it was. Bathroom counter. Room 214. I closed my eyes and said something I will not repeat. Then I looked back toward the office. The clerk was gone from the window. I could have driven away. I should have. I had my wallet, my phone, my laptop, my clothes, everything important. But that is how these things get you. Not with something big. With one small thing you think you can safely retrieve. I got out of the car and ran back to the office. The door was locked again. I knocked hard on the glass. No answer. I could see the counter, the computer, the printer. The little TV with the weather map still moving silently. No clerk. I turned and looked up at room 214. The door was still closed. Then I saw light under it. A thin yellow line. I had left that room with the clerk. I had watched him close the door. I had left the key card on the table. I had not touched the lamp. But now the light was on. I stood there in the rain trying to decide what kind of stupid I was willing to be. Then I went up the stairs. The metal steps rang under my feet, too loud. The walkway smelled like wet concrete and cigarette smoke. When I reached 214, I raised my hand to knock, then stopped, because knocking on a room I had just left felt insane. I tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. For half a second, relief went through me. Real relief. The kind that almost feels like being forgiven. Then the lock clicked. From inside, the handle loosened under my hand. The door opened inward about 2 inches. I did not push it. I did not step in. I looked through the crack. The lamp was on. The bed was untouched. The table was visible beside the TV. The ice bucket was gone. That was somehow worse than seeing it. My makeup pouch sat on the floor just inside the door. Not on the bathroom counter, not on the sink, on the carpet, placed close enough for me to grab without entering. That should have been it. Take the pouch, leave. But behind it on the carpet there was a trail of water, small drops, leading from the table to the bathroom. I reached down and grabbed the pouch. The zipper was wet, cold. As I pulled it toward me, something inside rattled. Not plastic, not makeup, something harder. I stepped back into the walkway and opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, on top of my toothbrush and contact case, was a piece of ice. 1 cube, clear at the edges, still solid, still cold enough that it burned my fingertips when I touched it. Under the cube was another folded piece of paper. I did not want to open it there. I did not want to open it anywhere, but my hand was already doing it. The paper was damp in the middle. The ink was blue. This time it did not say 214. It did not say 211. It had my last name, spelled correctly. I think that was the moment the shape of it almost made sense to me. Not fully, not in a way I could explain, but enough. This was not about a broken ice machine. It was not about a room change. It was not even about someone hiding in a motel room before I arrived. The room had not been waiting for any guest. It had been waiting for the guest whose name would eventually be attached to it. My name had not shown in the system. My card had not been charged. The clerk could not find my reservation. But the room knew me anyway. I backed away from the door. It remained open 2 inches. No more, no less. The gap was black beyond the strip of lamplight. I had the terrible feeling that if I pushed it wider, I would not see a motel room at all. I would see something arranged to look like one. Then the ice machine at the end of the walkway made one soft clunk. I turned. The out of order sign was still taped across it. Another clunk, then another. I ran, down the stairs, across the lot, into my car. I dropped the makeup pouch on the passenger seat and reversed so fast my tires slipped on the wet pavement. As I pulled out, I looked once in the rearview mirror. The clerk was back in the office window. He was not looking at me. He was looking up at room 214. The door was open now, wide. The room behind it was completely dark. I drove for almost 40 minutes before I stopped again. A chain hotel this time, bright lobby, 3 floors, families in the parking lot. A woman at the desk who smiled too much and asked if I wanted bottled water. I nearly cried when she handed me a normal key card in a normal paper sleeve. The room was on the 3rd floor. No outside door, no vending area nearby, no ice bucket on the table. I checked twice. Then I put the deadbolt on, wedged a chair under the handle anyway, and sat on the bed until sunrise. I did not sleep. At 7 in the morning, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. There was no motel charge, nothing pending, nothing reversed, nothing. I checked my email, no receipt, No booking confirmation. No declined transaction. It was as if I had never checked in. I tried to search the motel by name, but there were 3 with similar names along that stretch of highway. I could not tell which one I had stayed at, or almost stayed at, or whatever the right word is for spending less than an hour in a room that somehow knew your name. Before I packed up, I opened my makeup pouch again. The ice cube was gone, just water in the bottom seam. The folded paper was still there. My last name had bled slightly, but it was readable. I almost threw it away. Instead, I put it in the side pocket of my suitcase. I do not know why. Maybe the same reason people keep hospital bracelets after an accident. Proof that something happened. Proof that you are not just afraid of your own memory. I made it to my meeting late. I gave the presentation with wet shoes and no sleep. No one noticed. Or if they did, they were polite enough not to say anything. That afternoon, I drove home. I did not take the same highway. I did not keep the paper in my suitcase for any good reason. That is the truth. I wish I could say I was being careful, that I wanted evidence, that I planned to report the motel or send a complaint or call someone who would know what to do. But I did not. I kept it because throwing it away felt worse. The drive home took almost 5 hours because I avoided the highway I had used the night before. I took smaller roads, county roads, places with gas stations that closed at 9, and churches with letterboards out front. I kept telling myself the longer route was safer because the weather was better there. Really, I just did not want to pass that exit again. By the time I got home, I had been awake for more than 30 hours. I left my suitcase by the laundry room door, took a shower, and slept on the couch with every light in the house on. I did not even make it to my bedroom. When I woke up, it was dark outside again. For a few seconds, I did not know where I was. The room felt too quiet. The air felt too cold. Then my cat jumped onto the back of the couch and knocked over a stack of mail, and I almost cried because it was such a normal sound. I ordered food, I changed clothes, I answered 2 work emails. I did everything people do when they are trying to convince themselves life has moved on. But the suitcase stayed by the laundry room door. I walked past it at least 10 times. Each time I thought about the folded paper in the side pocket. My last name in blue ink, damp from a piece of ice that should not have been there. Around 9, I finally opened the suitcase. Everything inside looked normal. Wrinkled blouse, laptop charger, makeup pouch, wet socks sealed in a plastic grocery bag, the ordinary mess of a bad work trip. I took the paper from the side pocket and set it on the kitchen counter. It had dried stiff. My last name was still readable. The ink had spread at the edges, but not enough to hide the letters. I took a photo of it with my phone. Then another. Then I searched the motel again. This time I used the town name from my gas receipt. I found it after a few tries. The listing was plain: low rates, free parking, cable TV, ice machine, exterior corridors, the same red sign I remembered from the rain. There were photos. I clicked through them slowly. Office, parking lot, second floor walkway, vending area. The ice machine was there, no out of order sign. Then came a photo of one of the rooms. Brown comforter, small table, TV on the dresser, lamp near the wall. And on the table, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a pale blue ice bucket. I leaned closer to the screen. The handle was turned away so I could not see if it was cracked. But it was the same kind. I know that sounds thin. Too thin to matter. Motels buy things in bulk. Lots of rooms probably had the same bucket. I told myself that. Then I read the reviews. Most were exactly what you would expect. Cheap but fine. Smelled like smoke. Good enough for one night. Staff rude. Bring your own towels. Then I found one from 6 months earlier. A woman said she had been assigned room 211, but her key opened another room. She said the front desk blamed the computer. She did not mention an ice bucket. She did not mention 214. She only wrote that the room felt already occupied even though it was empty. I read that line 3 times. Already occupied. There were 2 replies under her review. One from the motel manager apologizing for the confusion. One from another traveler who only wrote, "Same thing happened to me." I clicked to that person's profile. 1 review, no photo, no other information. The review they had left for the motel was gone, or hidden, or deleted. I closed the laptop. That should have been the end of it. For a while I made it the end. I did not call the motel. I did not leave a review. I did not tell my coworkers. When people asked why I looked so tired that week, I said the drive had been rough. That was true enough. A few days later, I finally unpacked everything. I washed my clothes, threw away the wet socks, cleaned the makeup pouch with alcohol wipes, even though I knew that did not mean anything. At the bottom of the suitcase under the lining near the wheel, I found something hard. At first, I thought it was a broken zipper tooth. I pushed my fingers under the fabric and pulled it out. It was a piece of plastic, small, curved, pale blue. For a while, I just held it in my palm. It was not bigger than a fingernail. One edge was jagged like it had snapped off under pressure. The other side was smooth and rounded. It had a thin gray line through it, where the plastic had cracked before breaking. I knew what it was before I let myself think the words. A piece of the ice bucket handle. I had never packed the bucket. I had never broken the handle. I had not even touched it hard enough to do that. But somehow a piece of it had come home inside my suitcase. I put it on the counter beside the folded paper. My last name, the blue plastic, 2 things from a room I apparently had never checked into. I called the motel then. I do not know what I expected. Maybe the clerk, maybe the manager, maybe a disconnected line. A woman answered. She sounded older, calm, professional in a tired way. I asked if they had a room 214. She said yes. I asked if anyone had stayed there on the night I gave her. She put me on hold. The music was faint and warped, same as the printer sound in the office. Same cheap speaker distortion, same low loop that never quite reached the end before starting again. When she came back, she said there was no record of me staying there. I told her I knew that. I said I had been assigned 214 after the computer changed it from 211. That made her quiet, not confused, quiet. Then she said you should not have been upstairs. I did not answer. She asked if I had taken anything from the room. The question was so specific that my stomach turned. I looked at the blue piece of plastic on the counter. No, I said. She exhaled softly. Then she said, if you find anything that belongs to the room, do not keep it. I asked what that meant. The line clicked. Not dead, just changed. There was another sound now, very faint, like ice dropping into an empty bin. One clunk, then another. Then the call ended. I threw the paper away that night. I threw the plastic piece away too. Not in my kitchen trash. I drove to a gas station 3 miles away and put both of them in the dumpster behind the building. I felt ridiculous doing it. I also felt better the moment they left my hand. For almost a year, nothing happened. I moved apartments, changed jobs, bought a new suitcase. I almost convinced myself the whole thing had been exhaustion and bad weather and one deeply strange motel clerk. Then last spring, I was packing for another work trip. Different city, different state, different suitcase. I opened the front pocket to put in my charger. Something was already inside. A folded piece of paper, dry this time, white. I stood there for a long time before I touched it. When I opened it, there was no name, no message, no warning, just a number written in careful blue ink. 214. I still do not know if I was supposed to be in that room, or if that room was waiting for whoever got sent there. At first, I thought the wall was coughing. That sounds stupid now. Walls do not cough. Old buildings make noise. Pipes knock. Air conditioners rattle. Cheap motel rooms settle at night like they are tired of standing. I knew all of that better than most people. I had been doing electrical and HVAC work for almost 15 years by then. I knew what bad wiring sounded like. I knew the difference between a water hammer in old pipes and a compressor kicking on behind thin drywall. I had slept in enough roadside motels to know that half the sounds you hear at night are just old systems trying to keep working. So when I first heard it, I did not panic. I was in northern Georgia for a job at a small grocery store outside Rome. Their walk-in cooler kept tripping a breaker and the owner wanted it fixed before the weekend. My company booked me the cheapest room they could find off the highway. 1 floor, exterior doors, ice machine by the office, laundry room around the back, the kind of motel that looked half full even when the parking lot was almost empty. My room was 128. It smelled like damp carpet and cigarettes that had been painted over. The bedspread was stiff. The bathroom light flickered for a full second before staying on. One outlet near the desk was loose enough that my phone charger sagged halfway out of it. Nothing unusual, not for that kind of place. I set my tool bag by the dresser, took off my boots, and checked the wall unit under the window because it was making a grinding sound. Bad fan bearing. Annoying, but not dangerous. Then I lay down. I had been on my feet since 6 that morning, and I remember thinking I would be asleep before the local news even ended. The bed was pushed against the wall farthest from the door. My head was maybe 6 inches from the drywall. On the other side, I assumed there was another room or a maintenance space, or maybe the old laundry room the clerk had mentioned when I checked in. The TV was on low. The rain outside was light. The air conditioner rattled under the window. Then I heard it, a soft cough, not from the TV, not from outside, from the wall behind my head. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. For a few seconds, I waited for it to happen again. When it did not, I almost laughed at myself. Someone in the next room, I thought, or pipes, or the air unit pushing through a bad vent. Then it came again, short, wet, close enough that I felt it more than heard it. I sat up. The room next to mine was quiet. No TV, no voices, no footsteps. I looked at the door between my room and the outside walkway. No shadow passed under it. No one was outside. The cough came a third time. This time I was facing the wall when it happened. The sound was not traveling through the wall. It was inside it. I got out of bed and turned on the lamp. The yellow light made the room look worse somehow. More stained, more tired. I pulled the bed away from the wall a few inches and looked behind it. Nothing. Just beige paint and a long scuff mark where the headboard had rubbed for years. But near the lower corner behind where the pillow had been, I noticed a rectangular patch in the paint, slightly smoother than the rest, about 2 feet tall, maybe 1 foot wide, like someone had cut into the wall once and sealed it back up badly. I crouched and touched it. The paint was cold, colder than the wall around it. I knocked on the patch with 2 knuckles, hollow. That was not strange by itself. Lots of motel walls are hollow. I knocked again a little harder. 1 second passed, then something knocked back, once, softly, from the other side of the patch. I pulled my hand away from the wall. For a few seconds I just crouched there beside the bed, staring at the patch in the paint. I wanted to knock again. That was the strange part. Some stupid professional part of my brain wanted to test it. 3 knocks this time, then 2, then 1, like I was checking a bad circuit or tracing a line through a wall. But the rest of me knew better. I stood up and listened. Nothing. The air conditioner rattled under the window. The TV murmured behind me. Rain ticked against the outside walkway. Normal motel sounds. I turned the TV off. The room became too quiet. I stood with my head tilted toward the wall and waited. Nothing coughed. Nothing knocked. That almost made me feel better. Almost. I told myself I had heard a pipe. Maybe an old supply line ran through that section of wall. Maybe the knock was thermal expansion. Old buildings shift when temperatures change. Metal pops. Wood moves. Drywall carries sound in strange ways. I had explained things like that to customers for years, so I tried explaining it to myself. Then I looked at the patch again. It was too clean. The rest of the wall had small dents and stains. A few old nail holes, a dark smear near the baseboard, but that rectangular section was smoother, painted over with the same beige color, but not the same texture. Someone had opened that wall before, and someone had sealed it. I got my flashlight from my tool bag. The beam made every flaw stand out. The patch had rough edges hidden under paint. Along the bottom near the baseboard, there was a tiny gap. Not wide, maybe the thickness of a credit card. I crouched again and shined the light into it. At first I saw only darkness, then dust. Then something pale caught the beam. I leaned closer. It was a strand of hair, long, dark, caught on a rough edge inside the gap. I stared at it longer than I should have. Hair gets everywhere. Housekeepers miss things. Previous guests leave things behind. That is what I told myself. But the hair was not dusty. It looked damp. I stood up too fast and hit my shoulder against the headboard. That was when the smell reached me. Faint at first. Not rot, not mold. Perfume. Cheap perfume. The kind that hangs in a room after someone has sprayed too much of it and left. It was coming from the wall. I stepped back. The smell vanished almost immediately. I moved closer again. There it was. Perfume mixed with damp drywall. I said out loud, "Nope," just one word, not loud. More like I was talking to the room than to myself. The wall answered with a breath, not a cough this time. A breath. Slow, close, right behind the patch. I backed away until I bumped into the dresser. The drawer handle dug into my hip. I remember looking toward the front door and thinking I should leave right then, but I still had my boots off. My charger was plugged in, my tool bag was open, my wallet and keys were on the little desk beside the TV. Those details sound small. They are small, but small things delay people. I put my boots on first, then I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. A man answered after a long time. Office. I told him there was noise in the wall behind the bed. He said pipes. I said I did electrical and HVAC work, and it did not sound like pipes. That annoyed him. I could hear it in the way he breathed. He asked what room I was in. I told him, room 128. The line went quiet. Not dead, quiet. Then he said, that wall backs up to the old laundry area. I looked at the patch. Is someone in there? No. Can someone get in there? No. That answer came too fast. I asked if the laundry room was locked. He said it had been locked for years. I asked if he had a key. He said the manager did. I asked where the manager was. He said, not here. While he talked, the wall made another sound, a small scrape, low, like fingernails dragging once across the inside of the drywall. The man on the phone stopped talking. I had not said anything, but he must have heard it through the receiver. I said, you heard that. He did not answer. The scrape came again, longer this time, then 3 soft taps, not random, tap, tap, tap. I held the phone closer to the wall without thinking. The man at the desk said very quietly, do not do that. I froze. What, do not put the phone near it? His voice had changed. No boredom now, no irritation, just warning. The wall tapped once more, then stopped. I asked him what was behind that wall. He said old storage. You just said laundry. It used to be laundry. And now, he did not answer. I heard paper shifting on his end of the line. Then something metal. Keys, maybe. I said I want another room. He said I can do that. But he did not sound relieved. He sounded like I had said the wrong thing. Then the wall behind the bed made a soft, wet cough. The man at the desk whispered something. I asked him to repeat it. He said, if it talks, don't answer. Then the line went dead. I stood there with the dead phone in my hand, staring at the wall like it might decide to explain itself. It did not. The patch behind the bed looked ordinary again. Beige paint, bad texture, a cold rectangular shape hidden under years of cheap motel repairs. If someone else had walked in right then, they would have seen a tired man in work pants standing beside a crooked bed with a phone receiver in one hand and a flashlight in the other. They would not have seen anything worth running from. That almost made it worse. I put the phone back on the nightstand and told myself to move. Get the wallet, get the keys, get the tool bag, walk out, ask for another room, sleep somewhere else. Simple. Then the wall tapped twice. Not loud, not urgent. Just 2 soft taps from inside the patch. I did not answer. The warning from the front desk stayed in my head. If it talks, don't answer. The thing was, it had not talked. Not yet. And that gave my brain just enough room to make one more bad decision. I grabbed a screwdriver from my tool bag. There was an outlet about a foot to the right of the patch, low on the wall, half hidden by the bed frame. The faceplate was crooked. One screw was almost stripped. I had noticed it earlier because bad outlets bother me the way crooked pictures bother some people. If there was a cavity behind that wall, I could at least see whether it was open. A chase, a duct void, a maintenance access, something normal. I moved the bed farther away from the wall. The legs dragged across the carpet with a dull scrape. The wall stayed quiet. I knelt in front of the outlet and removed the faceplate. The screw fell into the carpet. I remember that clearly. A tiny stupid thing. I spent maybe 5 seconds patting around for it before realizing how insane that was. Something was tapping behind the wall, and I was worried about losing a motel outlet screw. I pulled the faceplate off. The smell came out first. Perfume. Stronger now. Cheap and sweet mixed with damp dust and old insulation. I aimed my flashlight into the gap around the electrical box. There was nothing big enough for a person. Of course there was not. Just wires dust the side of a metal box and darkness beyond where the light could not reach. That should have made me feel better. Instead, I noticed the hair again. Not the same strand from the patch. Another one. It was caught on the edge of the electrical box, long, dark, wet enough to cling to the metal. One end disappeared behind the box like something on the other side had pulled away and left it there. I did not touch it. I am proud of that, if proud is the right word. I was still kneeling when the wall tapped again. This time not from the patch. From directly behind the outlet, one tap. Then another, so close to my face that I fell backward and hit the dresser with my shoulder. My flashlight rolled across the carpet and stopped under the chair. The room went half dark. The air conditioner rattled. The rain ticked outside. Then the tapping started again. Not random. It came in pairs. 2 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. I stayed on the floor breathing through my mouth because the perfume smell had gotten too thick. Then I realized the tapping matched something. My breathing. Every time I inhaled 2 taps. Every time I held my breath, silence. I tested it before I could stop myself. I held my breath. The wall went quiet. I let air out slowly. Tap, tap. I stood up so fast the room tilted. That was when my phone rang. Not the motel phone, my cell. It was on the desk plugged into the charger even though the outlet had barely held the cord earlier. The screen showed no caller ID. I almost did not answer. Then I thought it might be the front desk calling from another line. Maybe the clerk had changed his mind. Maybe he was coming. Maybe I was still close enough to normal that a phone call could fix this. I answered. For 3 seconds there was only static. Then the same man from the front desk said, "Are you still in the room?" His voice sounded wrong, not fake, just distant, like he was speaking through a long hallway. "Yes," I said. The tapping stopped. I should not have spoken. I knew it as soon as the word left my mouth. The wall became completely silent. The man on the phone said, "I told you not to answer." I looked at the patch. I thought you meant if the wall talked. He did not respond right away. Then he said, "I'm not calling you." I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. No caller ID. The voice on the line breathed once. Wet. Close. The same breath from behind the drywall. Then it said my room number, 128. Not in the clerk's voice anymore. Not completely. It sounded like someone trying to use his voice from inside a mouthful of water. I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet and stayed connected. From the speaker I heard the same voice whisper my room number again. Then the wall answered. Tap, tap, tap. I grabbed the phone and ended the call. The screen went black. For a moment nothing moved. Then something dragged behind the wall. Slowly. Not scratching now. Dragging. Like a body shifting in a space too narrow to turn around. The sound moved from the outlet across the patch, then down toward the baseboard behind the bed. I backed toward the front door. That was when I saw the bed had moved. Not much, maybe an inch, but the headboard was no longer parallel to the wall. It had been pushed out slightly from one side. From the wall side. I told myself that was impossible. The bed was heavy. I had moved it myself and felt the weight of it. Nothing behind a wall could push it unless there was space back there. Real space. The dragging stopped. A soft cough came from behind the patch. Then a whisper. Not a word yet. Just the shape of one. Like someone pressing sound through wet cloth. I grabbed my wallet from the desk. Then my charger. Then my tool bag. My keys were not there. I checked the desk again. Then the bed. Then the chair. They had been beside my wallet. I was sure of it. I had dropped them there when I came in right next to the motel key card and a gas station receipt. The key card was still there. The receipt was still there. My truck keys were gone. Behind me from inside the wall, something tapped once. Then I heard metal slide across carpet. I turned slowly. My keys were on the floor near the bed, not under it, not where they could have fallen. They were sitting at the base of the patched wall, lined up neatly with the rectangular outline in the paint. The key ring was wet. I did not move. Then the whisper came again. This time it was clear enough to understand. Not loud, not even human exactly, but clear. Take them. I stood by the door, frozen, staring at my keys. The wall waited. I did not want to cross the room. That is the simplest way to say it. My truck keys were maybe 8 feet away. Less than that, probably. They were sitting at the base of the wall, right below the rectangular patch, lined up so neatly it looked staged. The key ring was wet. A thin line of water had formed beneath it and soaked into the carpet. I stood by the front door with my tool bag in one hand and my wallet in the other, trying to make my legs work. The wall said nothing. That was almost worse than the whisper. It waited. I looked at the door behind me. Deadbolt, chain, handle lock. All I had to do was leave, go to the office, make the clerk give me another room, then call someone in the morning about whatever was behind that wall. But my truck was useless without the keys, and I was not leaving them there. I set the tool bag down by the door, slowly, like sudden movement would make the wall react. Then I took one step toward the bed. The carpet felt soft under my socks. Too soft. Old motel carpet has a certain dead feeling to it, like it has absorbed years of smoke and spilled drinks, and people walking barefoot when they should not. This felt wetter near the wall. I took another step. The patch did not move. The outlet hung open beside it, the wires still tucked inside. The long strand of hair clung to the metal box. It looked darker now, thicker, like it had soaked up water. I crouched, keeping my body as far from the wall as I could, and reached for the keys. The moment my fingers touched the metal, the wall breathed. Not a cough, a full breath. In, then out. The patch section pushed outward just slightly, not enough to break, just enough for the paint around the edges to crack. I grabbed the keys and fell backward. The wall went still again. I scrambled to my feet, hit my knee on the bed frame, and did not even feel the pain until later. I ran to the door, grabbed my tool bag, and started unlocking everything. Handle lock, deadbolt, chain. My hands were clumsy, the keys were slippery. Behind me, something dragged inside the wall again. Slow at first, then faster. It moved along the length of the bed down toward the corner, then stopped near the outlet. I opened the door. Cool rain air came in. The walkway outside was empty. I stepped out and pulled the door halfway closed behind me. I did not want to turn my back on the room long enough to shut it properly. That was when the motel phone rang, inside the room. One sharp ring, then another. I froze in the doorway. The phone was on the nightstand. The same phone I had used to call the desk. The same phone the clerk said not to put near the wall. It rang again. I could see it from where I stood. The receiver shook slightly in the cradle. I did not answer. Another ring. Then it stopped. For maybe 2 seconds there was only rain. Then the motel phone answered itself. I heard the click. The room speaker crackled. Then a voice came through. Small, wet, close to the wall and far away at the same time. You heard me? I slammed the door. I did not wait to see if it locked. I ran down the walkway toward the office boots, still untied tool bag banging against my leg. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. Rain came sideways under the awning. Every closed motel door looked like it was holding something back. The office window was lit. The man from the desk was already standing behind the glass. He did not look surprised to see me. That made me angrier than it should have. I banged on the night window with my palm. He opened the small metal drawer under the glass. I need another room, I said. He looked past me toward your room 128. You got your keys. That stopped me. Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? You got your keys. I held them up. His face tightened. Then he reached under the counter and slid a new key card through the drawer. Room 104, he said. I did not take it. What is behind that wall? Nothing you need to go near. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I leaned closer to the glass. There is someone in there. He looked tired then, not scared. Tired in a way that made me think he had been having this conversation for years, just with different people. He said no one is in there now. Now. He closed his eyes for a second. I asked where the old laundry room was. He looked toward the side of the building, then back at me. Behind the office. No, you told me it was behind my room. I said that because it is easier. Easier than what? He did not answer. I turned around and looked across the lot at my room. The door was closed. Light showed under it. A thin yellow strip. I had turned everything off before trying to leave. I was almost sure of that. The clerk slid the keycard farther toward me. Take 104, he said. Do not go back in 128. My charger's in there. Leave it. My work tools are in there. He looked at the tool bag in my hand. Not the important ones. That was true, and I hated that he knew it. I asked him to call the police. He did not move. I asked again. He said, for what? For someone in the wall. He gave me a look then, not mocking, worse, pitying. You can call them, he said. They'll come, they'll knock, they'll look at the room. They'll tell you it's old pipes, then they'll leave. You've done this before. He did not deny it. I took out my phone to call anyway. No signal. I walked 2 steps away from the window. Still nothing. I held it higher. Nothing. The clerk watched me through the glass. "Storm does that out here," he said. I did not believe him, but I also knew it might be true. That was the trap with that motel. Every wrong thing had a normal version sitting beside it. Bad pipes, old wiring, thin walls, storm interference, a tired clerk, a cheap room. I looked back at 128. The yellow strip under the door was gone. The room was dark now. The clerk said, "You should leave. I thought you were giving me another room." I was. And now, he looked past me again, at room 128, then at the far end of the building, at the outside wall behind my room. I followed his eyes. Behind that row of rooms was not a laundry area, not a storage room, not another hallway, just a narrow strip of grass, a chain link fence, and thick trees beyond it. There was no building behind my wall, no space big enough for a room, no locked laundry, no utility corridor, nothing. My mouth went dry. The clerk said quietly, "That is why I told you not to answer." I turned back to him. Inside the office, the phone started ringing. He did not pick it up. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. A second later, the phone in room 128 began ringing too. I could hear it from across the lot, muffled, distant, but clear. Then the light under the door came back on. The clerk pushed the drawer open again. This time there was no key card in it, just my registration slip, the one I had signed when I checked in. He said, "Take it and go." I looked at the paper. My name was on it, my license plate, my room number, 128. But under the room number in smaller handwriting that was not mine, someone had written another line. Heard him. I looked up at the clerk. He was no longer looking at me. He was looking over my shoulder. I did not turn around right away. I already knew where he was looking. Room 128. The door was open, only a few inches, and from inside the room, over the rain and the office phone and the buzz of the parking lot lights, I heard one soft cough. I left the registration slip in the drawer. I did not need it. My name on that paper did not prove anything I wanted proven. My license plate did not matter. The words under my room number mattered too much. Heard him. I backed away from the office window. The clerk tapped the glass once with 2 fingers. Not to scare me, to get my attention. When I looked at him, he pointed toward my truck. "Go." That was all. No refund, no apology, no explanation. Just that one silent instruction from a man who looked like he had already decided I would either listen or become part of whatever the motel kept quiet. So I went. I did not look back at room 128 until I was inside my truck with the doors locked. The room door was still open a few inches. No one stood in the doorway. No hand reached out. No face appeared in the gap. That would have been easier, I think. Something visible. Something clear enough to fear properly. Instead, I saw the bed. Just the corner of it through the opening. It had been pushed away from the wall, farther than I had moved it. The headboard faced the door at a slight angle, like someone had turned it to make room for something behind it. Then the room phone rang again. I could hear it even through my closed windows. 1 ring. 2, 3. The office phone rang with it. The clerk did not answer. Neither did I. I started the engine and pulled out so fast the back tires slipped on the wet pavement. I drove straight to a truck stop about 15 miles away and parked under the brightest lights I could find. For almost an hour, I sat there with my hands on the wheel. Every few minutes, I checked my rearview mirror. Not because I thought someone had followed me, because I kept expecting to hear a cough from the back seat. Eventually, I went inside. The truck stop was ugly and bright and loud, and I have never been more grateful for fluorescent lights in my life. There were people everywhere, drivers buying coffee, a woman yelling at a kid near the soda fountain, a cashier arguing with someone about lottery tickets. Normal noise, human noise. I bought a phone charger, a bottle of water, and the cheapest pair of socks they had. Then I sat in a booth near the window until sunrise. At 7, I called the motel. A woman answered. She sounded like she was reading from a script before I even spoke. I told her I had stayed in room 128 the night before. I told her there was something in the wall. I told her the night clerk had said the wall backed up to an old laundry area. She asked for my name. I gave it. I heard typing. Then she said, "We don't have a guest under that name." I almost laughed. By then that answer felt familiar. I gave her my license plate. More typing. Nothing. I asked if room 128 existed. She said yes, of course it existed. I asked what was behind the wall at the head of the bed. She said outside. Just that. Outside. I told her the night clerk said there used to be laundry or storage back there. She paused, then said the laundry room is behind the office. I know, I said. That made her quiet. I asked if there had ever been an access panel behind the bed in room 128. She said maintenance records were private. I asked if the room should be rented. She said all available rooms were inspected before use. It was the kind of sentence that means nothing. I asked if she could have the manager call me. She said yes. No one ever did. I drove back to the job site that morning because I did not know what else to do. Work has a way of making you pretend your life is normal. Breakers still trip, customers still complain, coolers still need to run. I fixed the grocery store problem in under 3 hours. Bad relay, easy repair. The owner thanked me and gave me a sandwich from the deli case. I remember sitting in my truck afterward eating that sandwich with shaking hands, thinking about how simple machines are compared to people, compared to buildings, compared to whatever can hide inside a place everyone agrees is empty. For a few weeks I tried to forget it. I told myself the motel clerk had messed with me. Maybe there was a crawl space. Maybe someone had been living back there. Maybe the back wall had some old maintenance void that did not show from the outside. I drew it out on paper more than once. Room layout, bed wall, exterior wall, laundry behind office, parking lot, fence, trees. No matter how I drew it, there was nowhere for a person to be. Not unless the room was deeper on the inside than it looked. I hated that thought, so I threw the drawings away. About a month later, I got a call from an unknown number. I was at home. It was a Saturday morning, sunlight in the kitchen, coffee on the counter, a game playing low on the TV in the living room. I answered without thinking. At first there was only static, then a sound I knew, an old air conditioner rattling under a window. My kitchen went cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. I did not speak. The static shifted. Something tapped once, then twice, then 3 times. Not random, patient, like it had all the time in the world. I hung up. The number called back immediately. I blocked it. It called again from a different unknown number. I turned my phone off and left it in a drawer until the next morning. After that, I moved my bed away from the wall. Just a few inches at first, then a foot, then across the room entirely. My wife thought it was about back pain. I let her think that. There are things you do not tell someone unless you are ready for them to hear the room differently forever. A few months later, we moved apartments. Not because of the phone calls. That was what I told myself. The lease was ending, rent was going up. The new place had better parking, all normal reasons. On our last night there, I slept on the couch. Our bedroom was empty except for the bed frame and 2 boxes. The mattress was already wrapped in plastic. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a cough. Soft, wet, close. I sat up on the couch and listened. The apartment was dark. My wife was asleep beside me. The hallway was black. Outside, a car passed slowly and threw headlights across the ceiling. The cough came again. From the bedroom, I stood up without turning on the light. I walked down the hall. The bedroom door was open. Nothing inside. Just boxes, bare floor. The bed frame against the far wall. Then I heard it one more time, not from inside the room. From the wall behind the bed frame, that wall faced outside. 3 stories up. No neighbor. No hallway. No crawl space, just brick air in the parking lot below. I closed the bedroom door. We left before sunrise. I never went back for the last box. I still do electrical work. I still stay in motels sometimes though, not often. When I have to, I ask for a room with the bed in the middle of the wall, not the corner. I check behind the headboard. I look for paint patches. I listen before I unpack. People think I am being careful about bugs or bad wiring. I let them think that too, but the first thing I do in any room is pull the bed away from the wall, just enough to see the floor behind it, just enough to make sure there is space between me and whatever the wall might be holding. I do not sleep with my head against drywall anymore, and if I ever hear coughing from the other side, I leave before it learns my voice. My son said the man came in while I was in the shower. That was the sentence that kept replaying in my head later. Not because it was loud when he said it. It was not. He said it softly, almost casually, the way 6-year-olds say things when they do not yet understand which details should scare adults. We were moving from Kentucky to Ohio that week. Just me, my son, and everything I could fit into the back of my SUV. My sister had already taken the big furniture in a rented truck, but I still had clothes, boxes, toys, documents, kitchen things, all the small pieces of a life that make a car feel too full and a person feel too alone. By the time we crossed into Ohio, my son had a fever, not high enough for an emergency room, not low enough for me to ignore. He was flushed and quiet in the back seat, hugging a stuffed dinosaur against his chest and blinking at the highway lights like they hurt his eyes. I told myself I could drive another hour. Then he said his stomach hurt. That was enough. I pulled off at the next exit and found the first motel with a vacancy sign. It was exactly the kind of place I normally would have avoided. 1 floor, outside doors, a narrow office window with a scratched metal drawer, a soda machine humming near the corner. A camera mounted above the walkway pointed toward the rooms, but the little red light on it was not blinking. I noticed that. Mothers notice cameras. The man at the night window looked middle-aged, maybe older. It was hard to tell through the glass. He had a dark sweatshirt on, not a uniform, and he spoke through a small round speaker that made his voice sound thinner than it probably was. I asked for 1 room. He looked past me at my SUV. Just the 2 of you. I did not like that question. I know it is normal. People ask how many guests are staying. It affects towels rates, fire codes, whatever. But the way he said it felt too personal, like he already knew the answer and wanted to hear me confirm it. I said yes. He slid a keycard through the drawer. Room 122. I asked if it was close to the office. He said close enough. That did not make me feel better. Room 122 was near the vending machine 3 doors down from the corner. I parked right in front of it, left the headlights on while I unloaded and carried my son inside first. The room smelled like bleach over old smoke. There were 2 beds, a small table, a TV, a sink outside the bathroom, and 2 white towels folded on the rack. 2. I remember that clearly because I looked for a 3rd towel to put under my son's head in case he got sick during the night. There was not one. I locked the door, handle lock, deadbolt, chain. Then I pushed my biggest suitcase in front of it. After that, I checked the window lock and closed the curtains all the way. My son lay on the bed closest to the wall, still holding his dinosaur. I gave him children's medicine from my purse and made him sip water. His forehead was warm, but his breathing sounded normal. That helped. A little. I told him I was going to take a quick shower and that I would leave the bathroom door cracked so he could call me if he needed anything. He nodded. The shower took maybe 6 minutes. Maybe less. I did not wash my hair. I did not relax. I just stood underwater hot enough to make the room steam and tried to think about the next day. New apartment, new school, new job, new start. When I came out wrapped in a towel, my son was sitting up in bed. He looked more awake than before. On the bed beside him were 3 folded white towels. Not 2, 3. They were stacked neatly at the foot of the mattress. I stared at them before I looked at him. Where did those come from, I asked. He rubbed one eye with the back of his hand. The man brought them. I felt the room shrink around me. What man? He pointed toward the door, the one from outside. I looked at the suitcase in front of the door. Still there. The chain was still on. The deadbolt was still locked. The handle lock was turned. Nothing had moved. My son hugged his dinosaur closer and said, "He said you asked for more towels." For a few seconds, I did not ask anything else. I only stared at the door. That was the first thing my mind went to. Not the towels, not the man, the door. The suitcase was still pressed against it. The chain was still stretched tight in its slot. The deadbolt was turned. The little latch above the handle was pushed down. Everything looked exactly the way I had left it before stepping into the shower. I crossed the room and checked it anyway. The suitcase had not moved. I knew because one wheel was caught in a dark stain on the carpet and the mark lined up the same way. The chain had no slack. The deadbolt scraped when I tested it. The handle would not turn. No one had opened that door. At least no one had opened it the way doors are supposed to open. I turned back to my son. He was sitting on the bed with the dinosaur tucked under one arm, watching me with that tired, glassy look sick kids get. He did not look scared. That almost made it worse. What did he look like? I asked. He shrugged. A man. What kind of man? He thought about it. Dark shirt, like the man at the office. Another shrug. I don't know. Did he knock? No. Did he say anything else? My son looked at the towels, then back at me. He said you were busy. I felt something cold move through my stomach. The bathroom door had been cracked. Steam had filled the sink area. The shower had been running. Anyone inside the room would have known exactly where I was. I sat beside my son and made myself keep my voice soft. Did he come close to you? He shook his head. He put them there. He pointed to the foot of the bed. Then he looked at the door. What door? That one. He pointed at the front door. I did not understand. He looked at the door after he came in. My son nodded, like he was checking it. I stared at the chain again. Checking it. That word bothered me. I picked up the towels. They were clean, warm almost. Not dry or warm. More like they had been held against someone's body for a while. They smelled like the room did. Bleach, old smoke, something faintly sour underneath. I dropped them on the chair by the table. Then I called the front desk. The room phone had a yellowed sticker with one number printed on it. Office. I pressed it and waited. The man answered after 6 rings. Yeah, not front desk, not the motel name. Just yeah. I told him someone had entered my room. He did not say anything. I told him my son saw a man come in with towels while I was in the shower. Still nothing. Then he said housekeeping stops at 9. It was almost midnight. I said, then who brought towels? No one from here? I looked at the 3 towels on the chair. You asked if it was just the 2 of us, I said. That's standard. My door is locked. That's good. The way he said it made me feel like he was not reassuring me. He was agreeing that I should keep it that way. I asked if the cameras outside the rooms were working. He said they record when they record. What does that mean? It means I'm not maintenance. I nearly hung up then. I nearly grabbed my son and left. But my son coughed into his sleeve small and dry, and the sound pulled me back into the room. He was sick. I was tired. The highway outside was wet and dark, and I did not know the area. So I asked if there was another room. The man said, not tonight. That was too quick. I had seen maybe 6 cars in the lot. I said that. He said rooms are down for cleaning. At midnight. No answer. Then he asked, is your son okay? I went still. I had not told him my son was sick. I had not said fever. I had not said medicine. I had not said anything about him except that he saw a man. What did you say? I asked. He paused. Then quieter kids get scared in unfamiliar rooms. I looked at my son. His cheeks were red. His hair stuck to his forehead. The medicine bottle sat on the nightstand beside the water cup. It was visible from the room. Not from the office. Not from outside. From inside the room. I asked the man how he knew my son was not feeling well. The line made a soft clicking sound. Then he said, ma'am, keep the chain on. The call ended. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to the dead line. My son whispered from the bed, Mom. I turned. He was looking at the towels on the chair. One of them had unfolded slightly. Not fallen. Not slid. Unfolded. Just enough to show something tucked inside. A small white paper sleeve. The kind motels put key cards in. I walked over and pulled it free. There was no card inside. Only a room number written on the front in blue pen. 122. I held the empty key card sleeve for longer than I should have. Room 122. Blue pen. Careful handwriting. Not printed by the motel. Not stamped by a machine. Written by hand like someone had filled it out before bringing the towels in. I checked the sleeve I had been given at the night window. It was on the dresser beside my purse. Same cheap paper, same motel logo, same room number. But the handwriting was different. The one from the office was messy and fast. This one was neat. That scared me more than the missing card. I put both sleeves on the table and took a photo of them with my phone. I do not know why. Proof maybe, or something to look at later when my brain tried to make the whole thing smaller. Then I moved. I put my shoes back on. I changed into dry clothes as fast as I could. I zipped my son's backpack and put his medicine in my purse. I did all of it quietly because the room felt like it was listening. My son watched me from the bed. "Are we leaving?" he asked. Maybe I said. That was a lie. We were leaving. I only said maybe because he already looked scared enough. Outside, rain tapped against the window. Not heavy, but steady. The kind of rain that makes the road shine and hides everything beyond the motel lights. I looked through the curtain. The parking lot was almost empty. My SUV sat directly in front of the room. The office window glowed at the far end. I could not see anyone inside. I looked up at the camera over the walkway. Still no red light. I pulled the curtain closed again. Then I pushed the suitcase harder against the door. I added the chair too, wedging it under the handle. It was not much, I knew that. But I needed something between us and the outside. My son coughed. The sound was small and dry. I touched his forehead. Still warm, not worse, not better. I thought about calling 911, but then I thought about what I would say. Someone brought towels into my locked motel room. My son saw him. There's an empty keycard sleeve. The cameras might not work. It sounded thin, too thin for police to care quickly. And if the man at the office was involved, I did not want to stand outside with my sick child waiting for someone to believe me. So I sat in the chair beside the bed and watched the door. For maybe 15 minutes, nothing happened. The TV was off. The bathroom fan hummed. My son drifted in and out of sleep, still holding his dinosaur against his chest. Then the keycard reader outside the door beeped. One clean electronic sound. My whole body locked. The handle moved. Not much, just a small downward twitch. The chair held it in place. The suitcase pressed against the bottom of the door. The chain trembled once, then went still. I stood up. My son opened his eyes. "Mom." I held one finger to my mouth. Another beep. The handle moved again. This time the person outside pushed a little harder. The door shifted against the chain with a soft metal click. Then everything stopped. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. The walkway outside was empty. No face, no shoulder, no shadow passing by the light. I kept my eye there anyway. For a few seconds I thought maybe whoever it was had crouched down or stepped just out of view. Then a voice came from the other side of the door. Low, male, close to the wood. I brought the thermometer. My hand came off the peephole like it had burned me. My son made a tiny sound behind me. I had not asked for a thermometer. I had not told the office my son had a fever. I had not told anyone at that motel anything except one room, one night, 2 guests. The voice came again. "Ma'am?" Polite, almost gentle. That made it worse. I did not answer. The man outside waited. Then something slid under the door, slowly. A small plastic package appeared on the carpet, pushed through the gap beneath the door. With 2 fingers I could not see. It stopped against the suitcase wheel. I stared at it. It was a digital thermometer, the cheap kind from a pharmacy. White plastic, clear cover. The cardboard backing had already been torn open at one corner. My son whispered, "That's him." I turned around. He was sitting up now, eyes wide, face shiny with fever. "The towel man?" I asked. He nodded. Outside the door, the man said, "You should check him before morning." Still polite, still quiet, like he was doing us a favor. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk again. The line rang and rang. No answer. I called the motel number from the sign on the paper sleeve. Same thing, no answer. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. I did not answer. The buzzing stopped. A second later, there was a soft tap on the door. Not a knock. A tap. Then another. Then the keycard reader beeped again. This time the light on it flashed green. I saw it through the bottom gap. Green. The handle lowered all the way. The chair pressed hard into the carpet. The chain pulled tight. The door opened less than 2 inches. Just enough for me to see darkness outside. Just enough for him to know the lock had worked. The door stayed open less than 2 inches. That was all the chain allowed, but 2 inches felt like too much. I could see only darkness through the gap. Not a face, not a hand, not even the outline of a body. Just the black strip of the walkway outside, and the green light on the keycard reader fading back to red. The handle stayed lowered for another second. Then it lifted back into place, slowly, like whoever was outside had decided not to force it. My son started crying without making much noise. His mouth trembled, but he kept the sound inside the way children do when they understand that being loud might make something worse. I crossed the room and put my back against the door. Not because that would stop anyone, because I needed to feel it closed. The man outside did not knock again. He did not speak. For a while there was only rain, the bathroom fan, and my son breathing too fast on the bed. I looked down at the thermometer package on the carpet. It had stopped against the suitcase wheel. The plastic cover was scratched. The cardboard was bent at one corner. Whoever pushed it under the door had done it carefully enough not to make much noise. I did not pick it up. I did not want anything from him in my hand. I called 911. The call connected for maybe 4 seconds. Long enough for a dispatcher to say, "911, what's your emergency?" Then the line clicked and went flat. No static, no dropped call tone, just silence. I looked at the phone screen. No service. That made no sense. I had just called the front desk. I had just received an unknown call. I stepped toward the window and held the phone higher. One bar appeared, then vanished. My son whispered, "Can we go?" That broke the frozen part of me. "Yes," I said. I moved fast after that. Shoes first. Jacket, purse, medicine, his dinosaur. I left one suitcase behind because it was too heavy and too far from the door. I left the towels on the chair. I left the thermometer on the floor. I left the empty key sleeve on the table. The only thing I cared about was getting my son to the car. I wrapped him in his hoodie and told him to keep his face against my shoulder. He was too old to be carried easily, but fever makes children small again. He clung to me with both arms around my neck. I moved the chair, then the suitcase. Then I stood there with my hand on the chain. For 1 second I listened. Nothing outside, no footsteps, no breathing, no man waiting right beyond the peephole. I opened the door fast. The walkway was empty. Rain blew sideways under the awning. The vending machine buzzed near the corner. The camera above the walkway pointed down at us with its dead red light. The office window glowed at the far end of the lot, but I could not see anyone behind the glass. I stepped out and pulled the door closed behind us. I did not wait to hear it lock. My SUV was 10 feet away, maybe less. I still remember how long that distance felt. The parking lot had gone quiet in the way places get quiet after midnight. The highway noise was distant. The rain softened everything. Every motel door looked the same, closed, numbered, watching. I reached the SUV and hit unlock. Nothing happened. For half a second I thought the key fob was dead. Then I saw the rear passenger door. It was already open, not wide, just cracked. The dome light inside was off. I knew I had locked the car. I knew it with the same certainty I knew I had locked the motel room door. I had pressed the fob twice before going inside. I had heard the horn chirp. I had checked the rear hatch because I was carrying half our life in boxes. But the back door was open. My son lifted his head from my shoulder. "Mom," he whispered. "I know." I opened the driver's door first and reached inside for the lock button. Then I put my son in the back seat as fast as I could, buckling him with hands that felt too large and too clumsy. That was when I saw the towel. It was folded on the seat beside his booster, white, clean, exactly like the towels from the room. Sitting on top of it was a key card, no sleeve, just the card, white plastic with a black magnetic strip and no motel logo. I did not touch it. I picked up the towel by one corner and threw both towel and card onto the wet pavement. The key card landed face down in a puddle. My son watched it through the window. "He said we forgot one," he whispered. I got in the driver's seat and locked every door. "Who said that?" "The man." "When?" My son looked down at his dinosaur. "When you were getting the bags." I had not taken more than a few seconds. I had not let go of him until we reached the SUV. I started the engine. Across the parking lot, the office light flickered once. The night window was empty. Then the phone inside room 122 started ringing. I could hear it through the closed motel door. 1 ring, 2, 3. No one answered. I backed out of the space so quickly the tires slid on the wet pavement. As I pulled toward the exit, I looked in the rearview mirror. Room 122 was closed. The office was still lit. The towel lay in the parking lot behind us. The keycard was gone. I almost stopped. I almost convinced myself I had not seen that correctly. Then my son said very softly, "He's by the machine." I looked toward the vending machine. A man stood beside it. Dark shirt, still, face turned away from the light. He was not running after us. He was not waving. He was not even looking at the car. He was looking at the door to room 122, like he was waiting for someone else to come out. I drove straight through the exit and onto the highway. My son fell asleep before we reached the next town. I kept one hand on the wheel and one hand on the door lock until the motel lights disappeared behind us. 10 miles later, at a gas station bright enough to hurt my eyes, I pulled under the canopy and finally breathed. I checked my son first. Still warm, still breathing normally. Then I checked the back seat. No towel, no keycard, no man. Just boxes, blankets, his backpack, and the stuffed dinosaur pressed under his arm. I told myself we had gotten away. Then I saw the passenger seat. A white paper key sleeve sat there, dry, neatly placed beside my purse. Room 122 was written on the front in careful blue ink. Inside the sleeve was a key card, the one I had thrown into the puddle, or another one exactly like it. I did not open the sleeve. Not there. Not with my son asleep in the back seat, and the gas station lights buzzing overhead, and the motel still close enough that I felt like someone could pull in behind us at any second. I picked it up by the corner, carried it to the trash can beside the pump, and dropped it inside. Then I stood there staring down into the trash. The sleeve lay on top of a coffee cup and a stack of lottery tickets. Room 122 faced up in blue ink. The key card was still tucked inside, just visible at the edge. For a second I thought about taking a picture. Proof. That word came back again and again that night. But proof would not have made me feel safer. Proof would only mean I had to keep looking at it. So I left it there. I bought children's fever medicine, bottled water, and a phone charger from the gas station. The cashier asked if everything was okay. I said yes too quickly. She looked past me at my son sleeping in the SUV, then back at my face, and I could tell she did not believe me. I almost told her. I almost said there was a man at the motel, and he had a key to our room, and he knew my son was sick, and somehow the key kept coming back. But I heard how it sounded before I said it. So I only asked where the nearest urgent care was. She gave me directions to a 24-hour clinic 2 exits away. My son's fever was lower by the time a nurse checked him. Nothing serious. Viral probably. Fluids, rest, watch him overnight. Normal words, beautiful words. I sat in that bright clinic room with cartoons playing on a wall-mounted TV and almost cried from how ordinary it all was. We stayed there until morning. Not because we needed to, because I did not want to be in another room with a door that locked from the inside, but apparently meant nothing. After sunrise, I called the motel. A woman answered this time. I asked for the manager. She said the manager was not in yet. I said someone had entered my room during the night. That changed her voice. Not much, but enough. She asked what room. I told her. Room 122. A pause. Then she asked for my name. I gave it. I heard typing. Then she said, "You checked out around 1:40. I looked at my phone. I had left closer to 1, maybe earlier, maybe later. Time had become soft after the keycard reader turned green. I did not check out, I said. I left because someone was trying to get into my room. Another pause. Then there was only one key issued. I closed my eyes. No, I said, there was another one. Our system shows one active card. Your system is wrong. She did not argue. That was worse. I asked about the cameras outside the rooms. She said they had been having recording issues. Of course they had. I asked about the night clerk. She said he was new. I asked for his name. She said she could not provide employee information. I described the man at the window. Middle-aged, dark sweatshirt, no uniform, thin voice through the speaker. She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "That does not sound like our night clerk." I asked who it sounded like. She said, "Ma'am, if you feel unsafe, you should contact local police." That was the sentence people use when they want the conversation to stop being theirs. So I called the police. I gave a report over the phone from the clinic parking lot. The officer listened. He was polite. He did not laugh. That helped a little. But I could hear the shape of the report forming as he typed. Suspicious person. Possible motel staff issue. No assault. No theft. No visible suspect. No working footage. He told me to keep the key card if I still had it. I told him I had thrown it away. He paused at that. I hated myself for it. By then, the gas station trash had probably been emptied, or the keycard had sunk under coffee and rainwater and garbage. Either way, I was not going back. My son woke up in the back seat while I was still on the phone. He looked better, pale but better. He asked if we were going home. I said yes. This time I meant it. We drove the rest of the way in daylight. I kept checking the rearview mirror, not for a car following us. For him, the man by the vending machine, dark shirt, still body, face turned away from the light. My son did not mention him again. Children can do that. They can survive something strange and then ask for pancakes 20 minutes later. I envied him for it. We reached my sister's house that afternoon. She helped me unload the SUV and kept asking why I looked like I had not slept. I told her my son had been sick all night. That was true enough. For the next few days, life became boxes. Kitchen boxes, bedroom boxes, school forms, address changes, new keys, new locks, new apartment smell. I almost convinced myself the motel was behind us. Then I washed my son's hoodie, the one he had worn that night. I checked the pockets because he always stuffed things in them. Candy wrappers, rocks, small toys. The kind of treasures adults throw away by accident. In the right pocket I found a key card, white plastic, black magnetic strip, no logo. For a while I just held it over the washing machine. I had thrown the key card away. I knew I had. I had thrown the sleeve and the card into the gas station trash. I had watched them land there. I had walked away without taking a picture because I was too scared to keep proof. This card was dry, clean, no rainwater, no dirt, no crease from the sleeve. I checked the other pocket. There was a folded piece of paper inside. Same motel sleeve, same cheap paper. Room 122 written on the front. Inside, in the same careful blue handwriting, were 3 words. Keep this one. I sat down on the laundry room floor. I did not cry. I wanted to. But my son was in the next room watching cartoons, and my sister was upstairs moving boxes, and I had already learned that fear gets worse when you have to explain it to someone who has not heard the keycard reader turn green. I cut the card into pieces with kitchen scissors. Then I cut the paper too. I put half in one trash bag and half in another. The next morning, both bags were gone from the curb. For months after that, I checked every pocket before we left the house. My son's coats, his jeans, his backpack, his lunchbox. I knew it was irrational. I did it anyway. Once he asked me what I was looking for. I said keys. He laughed because he thought I meant my own. I let him think that. A year later, we stayed in a hotel for my cousin's wedding. Not a motel, a real hotel. Bright lobby, elevators, key cards that printed our names on the envelope. I still asked for a room near the front desk. I still checked the chain lock. I still put a chair by the door after my son fell asleep. In the morning, housekeeping knocked. A normal knock. Loud. 3 times. I opened the door with the latch still on and told them we were not ready. The woman apologized and moved on. Perfectly normal. After she left, my son looked up from the bed and said, "That's not the towel, man." I went cold. I asked him what he meant. He shrugged and went back to his tablet, like it was nothing, like the thought had only passed through him. I never asked again. I still check his pockets every time we leave a motel. Not for toys, not for wrappers, not for the little things kids steal without knowing why, for keys. I only needed the room for one night. Someone else seemed to need it too. I had not planned to sleep in a motel that evening. I had not planned to sleep anywhere except my own bed. But my wife and I had one of those arguments that starts over something small and ends with both people saying things they do not actually mean. By 10:30, I was sitting in my truck in the driveway with the engine running, telling myself I was only going to drive around for a while and cool off. I drove for almost an hour, not far, just in circles mostly, past the same strip malls, the same closed gas stations, the same empty school parking lots. I did not want to call a friend and explain why I needed a couch. I did not want to go back inside and admit I had overreacted. I did not want to sleep in the truck and wake up stiff and ashamed in my own driveway. So I stopped at a cheap motel near the edge of town. It sat behind a gas station and a closed diner low and yellow under the parking lot lights. One floor. Outside doors. A small office window with a bell taped beside it. The sign said, Cable TV and Weekly Rates, which told me exactly what kind of place it was. That was fine. I was not looking for comfort. I was looking for somewhere nobody knew me. The man at the night window barely spoke. He slid me a key card for room 106 and a paper sleeve with the checkout time stamped in red 11 a.m. I paid with my debit card and bought a bag of food from the gas station next door before going to the room. Room 106 smelled like old cigarettes and bleach. The bedspread was thin. The carpet near the bathroom was darker than the rest. The air conditioner under the window made a steady clicking sound every time the compressor kicked on. The TV was already on when I walked in, but the screen only showed gray static with a faint weather alert bar at the bottom. I pressed the power button. Nothing. I pulled the plug from the wall. The static vanished. That made me feel a little better. I locked the door. Handle lock, deadbolt, chain. Then I dragged the only chair in the room under the handle, not because I was scared, but because cheap motel doors never feel as solid as they should. I ate half the burger at the small table by the window. The fries were cold. I drank some water and left the bottle beside the bag. Then I sat there for a while staring at my phone waiting for my wife to text. She did not. I typed 3 different messages and deleted all of them. Around midnight, I brushed my teeth at the sink outside the bathroom. The faucet squealed when I turned it on. The mirror had a crack in one corner. A towel hung beside the shower stiff and folded too neatly. Before I turned off the lamp, I noticed the alarm clock on the nightstand. It was one of those old motel clocks with red digital numbers and buttons that never work right. The time was wrong by almost 20 minutes. That did not bother me. The alarm was set for 3:17 a.m. That did. I had not touched it. I pressed the alarm button until the little dot disappeared from the screen. Then I checked it twice to make sure it was off. After that, I put my phone on the nightstand, lay down on top of the covers, and stared at the ceiling. The room was quiet except for the air conditioner and the rain tapping lightly against the window. I remember thinking the argument would feel smaller in the morning. I remember thinking I would apologize first. Then I fell asleep with my shoes still on. When I woke up, the room was blue. The TV was on again. The weather channel was playing with the volume low. A radar map moved across the screen. I sat up slowly. The clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. For a few seconds, I did not move. I sat there with one hand on the blanket staring at the TV across the room. The weather channel was on. A woman in a blue dress stood in front of a radar map talking about overnight rain moving east. The volume was so low that I could only hear pieces of her voice between the clicks of the air conditioner. I looked at the wall outlet. The TV cord was plugged in. That was the first thing I checked. I remembered pulling it out. I remembered the gray static dying instantly. I remembered feeling better because the room had gone quiet. But the plug was back in the wall now. Not loose, not halfway in, pushed all the way in. I told myself I had dreamed it. That was easier. Maybe I had only turned the TV off with the remote. Maybe I had thought about unplugging it and remembered the thought as an action. I was tired, angry, half drunk on bad coffee and adrenaline from the argument. People misremember things. That was the first deal my brain made. Then I saw the fast food bag. It was still on the table by the window, but it was not how I had left it. I had left it open, the top crumpled fries spilling out onto the wrapper. Now the bag was folded shut. Not rolled, folded, neatly, the way someone folds a lunch bag to save for later. The water bottle beside it had been opened too. I knew because I had broken the seal earlier and only twisted the cap back halfway. Now the cap was tight. When I picked it up, the plastic crackled under my fingers and there was water on the outside like it had been held by a cold hand. I checked the door. The chair was still wedged under the handle. The chain was still on. The deadbolt was still turned. Nothing looked forced. No gap, no mark around the frame, no sign anyone had come in. That should have helped. It did not. I went to the window next. The curtains were closed, but one side had been pulled back slightly. I looked through the crack. The parking lot was wet and mostly empty. My truck sat right outside the room. 2 doors down, an old red sedan was parked under a broken light. No one was walking around. The office window glowed at the far end of the building. I let the curtain fall back. Then I heard water. Not rain, not pipes. A soft swirl from the bathroom. I turned toward it. The bathroom door was open. I had left it that way. The sink was outside the bathroom, built into a little counter near the closet, but the toilet and tub were behind a separate door. From where I stood, I could see the edge of the toilet bowl. The water inside was moving, slowly, like it had just been flushed and was settling back down. I stood there until it stopped. Then I stepped closer. The bathroom smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. The tub was dry, the tiny window above it was painted shut, and the metal latch had rust around the screws. No one had come in that way. No one could have. The toilet tank made a low filling sound. I put my hand on top of it. It was vibrating, fresh. I had not used the bathroom since brushing my teeth at the sink. I had not flushed anything. I checked the mirror above the sink. Nothing strange at first, just my own face looking too pale under the yellow light. Then I noticed the towel. The towel I had used earlier had been dropped on the floor beside the sink. I remembered that because I had felt guilty about it for half a second, then told myself motel towels existed to be used. Now it was hanging on the rack, folded once, straight, still damp. I backed away from it. That was the moment I thought about calling the front desk. Then I imagined myself saying it out loud. My TV plugged itself back in. My food bag got folded. My toilet flushed. Someone hung up my towel. It sounded stupid. Worse than stupid. It sounded like a man who had fought with his wife, driven to a motel, fallen asleep angry, and woken up looking for something else to blame. So I did not call. Not yet. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think. The clock still read 3:17. The numbers did not blink. They did not change. I watched them for what felt like a full minute. Still 3:17. Then the air conditioner clicked off. The room went quiet. From the bathroom, very softly, the toilet handle moved. Not all the way, just enough to rattle once. I stared at the toilet handle. It did not move again. For a few seconds, I convinced myself it had only been the tank settling. Old plumbing did that. Water pressure shifted. Valves clicked. Handles rattled. There were 100 normal reasons for a cheap motel bathroom to sound alive, but I did not believe any of them. I stood up slowly and walked to the bathroom doorway. The floor felt colder near the tile. The bathroom light buzzed overhead. The toilet bowl was still. The tub was dry. The little window above it had not moved. Nothing was hiding behind the shower curtain, because I had already checked, but I checked again anyway. Empty. I pulled the curtain all the way open and left it that way. Then I turned back to the sink. The towel was still hanging on the rack, folded once, straight, like housekeeping had come through while I slept. I took it down and smelled it before I could stop myself. Laundry soap, bleach, damp cotton, under that very faint cigarette smoke. Not old cigarette smoke soaked into the room. New, recent. I dropped the towel into the sink. That was when I saw the cup. A white paper cup sat beside the faucet. One of those plastic-wrapped motel cups I had not opened. It was half full of water now. Inside it was a cigarette butt. The paper was swollen. The filter had turned brown. A thin ribbon of ash floated at the top. I do not smoke. My wife does not smoke. There had been no ashtray in the room when I checked in. I noticed things like that because my father smoked his whole life, and even now the smell makes me think of him. I picked up the cup and held it under the light. The cigarette had not been there long. The water was still faintly cloudy around it. I set it down carefully. Then I looked at the mirror. There was a clean streak across it, one horizontal wipe right at eye level. The rest of the mirror had a dull film from steam and cheap cleaner, but that one strip was clear. Through it, my reflection looked cut in half. My eyes, my forehead, the top of my face floating in the glass. I had the sudden thought that someone had wiped that space so they could see me better. I backed out of the bathroom. The room behind me looked exactly the same. Bed, TV, table, fast food bag, chair under the door handle, blue weather map moving silently on the screen. I checked my phone. 3:18. Only 1 minute had passed. That felt wrong. I could not have checked the door, the window, the bathroom, the towel, the cup, the mirror all in 1 minute. But the phone said 3:18. The alarm clock still said 3:17. I turned it around so I did not have to look at it. Then I finally called the front desk. The room phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up and pressed 0. It rang 4 times. A man answered in a flat voice. Office. I said I was in room 106 and something strange was happening in the room. He did not ask what. He did not sound surprised. He only said, "Are you checking out early?" That question irritated me more than it should have. "No," I said. "I'm calling because someone might have been in here." There was silence on the line. I looked at the door while I waited. The chair was still there. The chain still hung tight across the frame. The man said, "Your room is marked checkout." I thought I misheard him. What? Room 106 is marked checkout. At 3 in the morning, at 3:17, the room went quiet around me. Even the TV seemed quieter. I asked who marked it that way. He said system did. I almost laughed because that was not an answer. It was what people say when they do not want to explain the thing they are responsible for. I told him I was still in the room. He said, "I know." That was the first time I felt real fear. Not confusion, fear. I asked him what that meant. He did not answer. From the bathroom there was a small sound, a wet click, like the cap of a water bottle being twisted open. I turned toward it. The man on the phone said, "Sir." I did not respond. I walked to the bathroom doorway. The paper cup was now on the floor. The cigarette butt was gone. The water in the cup had spilled in a small circle around it. On the counter, my water bottle sat beside the sink. The cap was off. I had left it on the table. I was sure of it. The man said again, "Sir." I whispered, "There's someone in here." He said nothing. I turned around and looked at the bed. No one. The table. No one. The corner by the window. No one. Then I heard a soft step behind me. Bare skin on tile. I turned back so fast my shoulder hit the door frame. The bathroom was empty, but the towel was hanging on the rack again, folded once, straight. The man at the front desk said very quietly, "Do not stay past checkout." Then the line clicked dead. I stood there holding the receiver until the dial tone came back. That was when I decided to record the room. I did not know what else to do. I opened the camera on my phone and set it on the TV dresser angled wide enough to catch the front door, the bed, the bathroom doorway, and most of the table. The battery was at 31%. Enough. I pressed record. Then I sat on the edge of the bed facing the bathroom. I told myself I would wait 5 minutes. Just 5. If nothing happened, I would grab my stuff and leave. If something did happen, I would have proof. The TV kept playing the Weather Channel. The woman in blue had been replaced by a man in a gray suit. He pointed at a storm map and smiled like it was morning somewhere else. The fast food bag sat on the table, folded shut. The water bottle sat by the sink, open. The towel hung on the rack, waiting. For maybe 2 minutes, nothing changed. Then behind me, from the carpet near the table, I heard one slow step. I froze. Another step, barefoot, soft, moving behind my back. I looked at the phone screen on the dresser. It showed the room behind me, the table, the door, the bathroom. Nothing there. But the sound came again, closer now, a bare foot pressing into cheap motel carpet. Then the fast food bag on the table folded itself tighter, one crease, then another. No hand, no arm, nothing visible at all. Just the paper moving like someone was carefully closing it for later. I watched the bag fold itself on the phone screen. That was the part my mind could not handle. If I had only heard footsteps, I could have blamed the room next door. If I had only seen the towel hanging again, I could have blamed myself. If the TV had been the only strange thing, I could have called it bad wiring. But paper does not fold itself. The fast food bag moved slowly, carefully, like someone was pressing the top down with both hands. One side folded over, then the other. Then the top crease flattened against the table. I was sitting 3 feet away from it. There was nothing between me and the bag. No hand, no shadow, no reflection in the window. Just the bag closing like someone wanted the room neat before morning. I stood up so fast the mattress springs popped beneath me. The movement stopped. The room went still. On the phone screen, everything looked normal again. The table, the bed, the bathroom doorway, the chair under the front door handle. I reached for the phone, but before I touched it, the chair moved. Not a lot. Just a small shift under the door handle, a quiet scrape against the carpet. I turned toward the door. The chain was still locked. The deadbolt was still turned. The handle did not move. Nothing pushed from the outside. The chair adjusted itself. That is the only way I can describe it. It slid half an inch to the left, then settled more firmly under the knob, like someone inside the room was making sure I could not leave quickly. I grabbed the phone and stopped recording. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped it. The video was there, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I did not want to watch it. I watched it anyway. For the first 2 minutes, nothing happened except me sitting on the bed, stiff and half turned toward the bathroom. Then the sound started. Bare feet on carpet. Slow, close. The video showed no one. The audio picked up every step. Then the bag moved. On video, it was worse. In real life, fear gives your eyes somewhere to hide. You look away. You blink. You convince yourself you missed something. A recording does not blink. The bag folded by itself in full view of the camera. Then under the table, the chair legs shifted slightly. I paused the video and zoomed in. There was still no hand, no wire, no person, nothing. The room phone rang. I nearly threw my own phone across the room. The motel phone rang again, once, twice, then stopped. A moment later, my cell phone buzzed in my hand. No caller ID. I did not answer. It buzzed until it went silent. Then a voicemail notification appeared. That should not have happened that fast. I opened it without thinking. For 2 seconds, there was only the sound of the Weather Channel playing in my own room. Then a man's voice said, "Room 106. It was the front desk clerk, or it sounded like him. The voice continued flat and tired. Checkout was 317. Behind the voice, I heard water running, then a toilet flushing, then the soft crackle of paper being folded. I deleted the voicemail. I do not know why. Maybe because keeping it felt like agreeing that it was real. I grabbed my jacket from the chair by the table. My wallet was still in the pocket. My phone charger was still plugged into the wall. My duffel bag was open beside the bed. I started throwing things into it. Socks, shirt, charger, toothbrush, anything I could see. The room stayed quiet while I packed. That made it feel watched. Like whatever was there had already done its part and was now waiting to see if I understood the rules. I checked the nightstand for my keys. They were gone. I had put them there. I knew I had, right beside my phone before I fell asleep. The motel key card was still there. The alarm clock still read 317. The lamp was still on. But my truck keys were not on the nightstand. I checked under the bed. Nothing. I checked the table. Nothing. The bathroom counter. Nothing. Then I looked at the trash can. It sat beside the table under the fast food bag. Inside, on top of a crumpled wrapper, were my keys. Neatly placed, not dropped. Placed. Beside them was a small white receipt. I did not recognize it. I picked it up first. It was not from the gas station, not from the motel office. At least not the receipt I had been given. This one was blank except for 3 lines. Room 106. Checkout 3:17 a.m. Guest stayed past time. My name was not on it. No total, no date. Just those lines printed in faint black ink. I took my keys and left the receipt in the trash. Then the bathroom faucet turned on. Full pressure. I froze with my hand on the duffel bag. The bathroom door was open. I could see the sink from where I stood. The faucet was running. Water hit the basin hard enough to splash the mirror. No one was there. The towel on the rack shifted once like someone had brushed past it. That broke whatever was left in me. I grabbed the bag, moved the chair away from the door, and unlocked everything as fast as I could. The chain stuck. For one terrible second, it would not slide free. Behind me, the TV volume rose. Not loud, just enough for the weatherman's voice to fill the room. Heavy overnight rain. Drivers advised to stay off the road. The chain came loose. I opened the door and stepped outside. Cold air hit my face. The parking lot was empty except for my truck and the red sedan 2 rooms down. The office light was on. I could see the night clerk through the window, sitting behind the counter looking directly at me. He did not wave. He did not move. I walked fast to my truck, not running, because some stupid part of me still did not want to look afraid. When I opened the door, I looked back once. Room 106 was open behind me. The TV was still on. The faucet was still running. And in the doorway just inside the room, the fast food bag sat upright on the carpet, folded shut, waiting to be thrown away. I did not go to the office. That was the first thing people ask when I tell this story. Why did I not go straight to the front desk? Why did I not demand a refund? Why did I not make the clerk walk back to the room with me and explain what I had just seen? Because he had already seen me. He had watched me leave room 106 from behind the office glass. He had not looked surprised. He had not looked worried. He looked like a man watching someone miss a deadline. That was what scared me most. Not the TV, not the toilet, not the bag folding itself. The look on his face. Like checkout time meant something different there. I got into my truck and locked the doors. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys onto the floor mat and had to feel around for them in the dark. The whole time I kept looking toward room 106. The door was still open. The light from the TV moved across the carpet in blue flashes. The faucet was running loud enough that I could hear it from the parking lot. Then the motel room door began to close, slowly, not pushed by wind, not slammed by someone leaving, just closing at a normal, careful speed, as if someone inside had decided the room was finished with me. I started the truck and drove out without checking the mirrors. For a while, I did not go home. I drove through empty streets until I found a 24-hour grocery store on the other side of town. I parked under the brightest light in the lot and sat there until the sky started to turn gray. Only then did I look at my phone. There were no missed calls from my wife, no texts, no voicemail from the no-caller ID number. The recording I had taken was still there. I opened it once, just long enough to see myself sitting on the bed while the fast food bag folded on the table behind me. Then I closed it. I wanted to delete it. I could not. I drove home a little after 6. My wife was asleep on the couch. She had left the porch light on. That almost broke me. I stood in the doorway for a long time, holding my duffel bag, looking at her face in the gray morning light. Suddenly, the argument from the night before felt ridiculous, small, embarrassing, something two tired people had made larger than it needed to be. I put the bag down quietly and made coffee. When she woke up, I told her I was sorry. I did not tell her where I had slept. Not then. I said I had driven around and parked for a while. That was close enough to true to pass as true. She was too tired to press me, and I was too ashamed to offer more. For 2 days, I tried to forget the motel. I went to work. I came home. I apologized properly. I deleted the video. That was the dumbest thing I did. I know that now. At the time, keeping it felt dangerous. Like holding on to it meant the room still had a reason to reach me. So I deleted it, then went into the recently deleted folder and erased it there too. After that, I checked my bank account. No charge, nothing pending, nothing reversed. The motel had not taken my money. I checked my email. No receipt, no confirmation, no late-night transaction alert. It was as if I had never rented room 106. Part of me felt relieved. Another part felt worse, because the room had not needed my card. A week passed. Then on a Thursday afternoon, I got a voicemail. No missed call, just the voicemail notification appearing on my screen while I was sitting in my truck outside work. The number was local, but I did not recognize it. I played it through the speaker. A woman's voice came on first. Calm, professional, the kind of voice people use at front desks. "Sir, we found something in your room after checkout." There was a pause. Behind her, I heard the Weather Channel, low volume, a man talking about overnight rain. Then I heard water run. Not a lot, just a faucet turning on in the background. The woman continued, "You can come by the office any time before 11 to pick it up." Another pause. A toilet flushed. My hand tightened around the phone. Then came the soft crackle of paper. Slow, careful, like someone folding a bag. The woman's voice did not change. Room 106. Then there was a second voice, closer to the phone, so close it sounded like lips almost touching the microphone. Not the woman, not the clerk. Something smaller, flatter. It said he stayed too long. The voicemail ended. I sat in my truck for almost 10 minutes without moving. Then I called the number back. Disconnected. I searched the motel name online, but there were 3 near that side of town with almost the same name. I drove by 2 of them that weekend. Neither looked right. The third one was the one behind the gas station and the closed diner. I did not pull in. I slowed down across the street just enough to see the row of doors. Room 106 was near the middle. The curtains were closed. The parking lot was almost empty. The office window was dark even though the sign said open. For a moment, I thought maybe I had the wrong place. Then the TV light came on behind the curtains of room 106. Blue, flickering, Weather Channel blue. I drove away before anything else happened. I finally told my wife some of it months later. Not everything. Enough that she understood why I hated motels after that. Enough that she stopped asking why I checked every hotel room like a cop searching a crime scene. I never told her about the last part. Because one night, almost a year later, we had another argument. Not as bad as that first one, just marriage, bills, work, exhaustion, words coming out wrong. I went to sleep on the couch. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up because the TV was on. We do not have cable. The screen showed a local weather map. The volume was low. I sat up slowly. On the coffee table, the takeout bag from dinner had been folded shut, neatly. Beside it, my water bottle was open. From the bathroom down the hall, I heard the toilet flush. I looked at my phone, 3:17 a.m. I did not move until sunrise. I never told my wife I drove past that motel again. I only slowed down long enough to see room 106. The curtains were open this time. The room was empty. The bed was made. The TV was off. But on the small table by the window, there was a paper bag, folded shut, waiting. The first rule my manager gave me was not about money. It was not about checking IDs or counting the drawer or calling police if someone refused to leave. Those came later. The first rule was stranger than that, and he said it so casually that I almost missed how wrong it sounded. If the system says a room is vacant, he told me believe the room first, not the guest. I thought he was joking. He was not. This was at the Desert Belle Motel, a one-story place off a highway in New Mexico between two towns most people only pass through. The sign was sun-faded. The pool had been empty for years. The vending machine took dollars, but almost never gave change. Most of the guests were truckers, road crews, people moving across the state, and the occasional couple who paid cash and did not want questions. I was 26 and broke enough to take the night audit shift, midnight to 8. Check in late arrivals, print receipts, watch the camera feed, balance the drawer, mark rooms vacant, dirty, clean, out of order. It was easy work if you did not mind being alone. I did not mind being alone then. My manager's name was Luis. He had worked there long enough to know every sound the building made. He knew which ice machine clunk meant it was jammed, which air conditioner rattles were harmless, and which guests would argue about a smoking fee before they even got to the room. On my first night, he trained me for 2 hours, then handed me the key ring and said he would be in the back office if I needed him. Before he left the counter, he repeated the rule. Believe the room first. I asked what that meant. Luis looked at the monitor where the room grid sat open. Little boxes, green for vacant clean, yellow for occupied, red for out of order. It means people lie, he said. Systems lag, housekeeping forgets, but rooms usually tell you what they are. That sounded like old motel wisdom, the kind of thing people say after too many years in one job. So I nodded and let it go. The first few hours were normal. A trucker checked into 119 and asked if the shower pressure was decent. A woman in a silver minivan paid cash for 103 and did not make eye contact. 2 college kids tried to get a room with one ID, then left when I asked for the second one. Around 2:30, the rain started. Not heavy at first, just a dry desert rain ticking against the office window and making the parking lot shine under the yellow lights. The camera feed turned grainy. The back row of rooms looked blue and flat on the screen. That was when I noticed room 118. The system marked it vacant clean. Green box, no guest assigned, no active key card. But on the camera, the curtain moved, just once. A small pull from the inside. I leaned closer to the monitor. Room 118 was near the end of the row between 117 and the old storage closet. The door was closed. No car was parked in front of it. No one stood outside. The curtain moved again, not like wind, like 2 fingers had touched the fabric and let go. I looked toward the back office. Luis had shut the door. A thin line of light showed underneath. I almost called him. Then I stopped myself. It was my first night. I did not want to be the guy who needed help because a curtain moved on a grainy camera. So I grabbed the master key and a flashlight. The walkway smelled like wet concrete and old cigarettes. Rain tapped off the roof in slow drops. I passed 116, then 117, listening for voices. Nothing. No TV, no shower, no footsteps. Room 118 looked empty from outside. No light under the door. No sound behind it. I knocked once. Front desk. No answer. I knocked again, then used the master key. The room opened easily. Cold air came out first. The kind of cold that feels like an air conditioner has been running too long in an empty room. I stepped inside and aimed the flashlight across the bed. Nothing. Bed made, towels folded, trash can empty, bathroom door open, curtains closed. Then I heard the TV. The screen was black, but the speaker was on, very low. A Weather Channel voice whispered through static, talking about overnight rain and low visibility on the highway. I walked over and pressed the power button. Nothing changed. I unplugged the TV from the wall. The voice kept going for 2 more seconds. Then it stopped. I stood there in the dark room holding the plug in my hand, listening to the rain outside. Behind me, the curtain moved again. I turned around so fast my shoulder hit the TV stand. The curtain was still. For a few seconds, I kept the flashlight on it, waiting for movement. Nothing happened. The fabric hung flat against the window, thick and brown and ugly, in the way motel curtains always are. I walked over and pulled it open. The glass looked out on the parking lot. No one stood outside. No one moved between the cars. The rain made every light stretch long and yellow across the pavement. I checked the window lock. It was latched. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I looked behind the shower curtain, inside the closet under the bed. Nothing. The room was exactly what the system said it was. Vacant. Clean. Except for the TV. And the cold. And the curtain. I went back to the office and told myself I had handled my first strange motel thing like an adult. I marked room 118 for maintenance because I did not know what else to call it. Then I wrote TV issue in the notes. Luis came out of the back office around 3 with a cup of coffee and asked why 118 was red. I told him the TV kept playing after I unplugged it. He did not laugh. He did not ask if I was sure. He only looked at the room grid for a few seconds and said, "Don't clean anything yourself after midnight." I didn't. Good. Then he went to the storage room and came back with a yellow sticky note. He stuck it to the monitor under the camera feed. "Do not enter vacant rooms alone after 2 a.m. I stared at it. Is that a real rule? It is now. He said it like that answered everything. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned that room 118 was not special. That was the part that changed how I slept. It was not one bad room. It was not one broken TV. It was not even one guest hiding after checkout. It was a pattern. Room 104 showed vacant clean one night, but when housekeeping opened it in the morning, the sink was wet and the towel was hanging on the rack like someone had just used it. Room 129 had a fast food bag folded neatly on the table, even though the trash had been emptied at 6. Room 111 smelled like fresh cigarette smoke, but the smoke detector never went off, and no one had rented it for 2 days. Little things. Easy things to explain away if you only saw one of them. Housekeeping forgot. Guest moved rooms. System lag. Old building. But when you worked night audit and watched the grid for 8 hours at a time, the little things started lining up. Luis never talked about it directly. He had rules instead. Do not enter vacant rooms alone after 2 a.m. Do not answer a room phone if the room is marked empty. Do not move personal items from a vacant room until morning. Do not ask a guest why they came back after checkout. That last one bothered me most. I asked him about it once. He was counting the drawer, and I was restocking key sleeves behind the counter. What does that mean, I asked. He did not look up. It means if someone says they need to get something from their room, you make a new key and let them get it. Even if they checked out, especially if they checked out, what if the room is already cleaned? He stopped counting. Then he said, "Then you do not go with them." I thought he was messing with me, but his hands had gone still on the cash. A few nights later, the ice machine quit. That would not have mattered, except the motel guests cared more about ice than almost anything else. They would tolerate bad pillows, noisy, AC no breakfast, even weak shower pressure. But if the ice machine was out, every other guest acted like we had personally ruined their trip. Luis put an out of order sign on it and told me to direct people to the gas station. Around midnight, he sent me to the storage room for extra towels. The storage room sat behind the office past the laundry shelves and the old security monitor that no longer worked. It smelled like detergent cardboard and damp concrete. There were shelves of folded sheets, spare lamps, old remotes, lost chargers, broken coffee makers, and a row of ice buckets stacked upside down. Most were black plastic, cheap newer ones with the Motel logo printed in white. But one bucket on the bottom shelf was pale blue. It looked older than the others. I only noticed it because it did not belong. The handle was cracked near one side, and the plastic had gone cloudy from years of use. There was no Desert Bell logo on it, no room number, no inventory sticker. I picked it up. It was dry, empty, still cold. That made no sense. The storage room was warm and stuffy. The air conditioner back there barely worked. Everything smelled like laundry heat and dust. But the bucket felt like it had just come from a cooler. I set it back on the shelf. Behind me, Luis said, "Don't use that one." I turned around. He was standing in the doorway with a stack of towels under one arm. "How long have you been there?" He ignored the question and looked at the bucket. "That one keeps turning up." I thought he meant guests stole it and brought it back. Then I saw his face. He meant something else. "Where did it come from?" I asked. Luis reached past me, took the pale blue bucket from the shelf, and moved it to the top rack where lost and found items were kept. "No idea. Then why keep it?" He looked at me. "Because throwing it away doesn't work." I almost smiled. Almost. Then the ice machine out by the vending area made a hollow clunk through the wall. One drop. Then another. Luis and I both stood still. The machine had been unplugged since 9. Luis unplugged the ice machine again. I watched him do it. He pulled the cord from the wall, wrapped it around the side handle, and taped the plug down with silver duct tape, like he was restraining something instead of fixing it. The out of order sign was still taped across the front. The bin inside was empty and dry. I checked it myself because I needed to see it. Luis did not tell me not to. He only stood back with his arms crossed, watching the machine like it might object. For the rest of that shift, it stayed quiet. No clunks, no ice, no sound except the vending machine humming beside it and rain ticking off the edge of the roof. But the pale blue bucket stayed on my mind. I found myself looking toward the storage room every few minutes, even though I knew the door was closed. That was the first time I started to understand how a place could train you. Not with one terrible event, with repetition, with small wrong things that made you change your habits without admitting why. 3 nights later, Luis asked me to help transfer old complaint files into the new system. The motel had been bought and renamed twice, but apparently every owner had kept boxes of old records in the back office. Some were water damaged, some were handwritten, some were printed from software, so old the pages had perforated edges. Most complaints were normal: no hot water, no refund, smoking fee disputed, guest says room smelled like dog. Then I found one that had no name attached, only a date from about 6 years earlier, and a note at the top forwarded from sister property. The complaint was short, but I read it 3 times. Guest assigned 211, key open 214, ice machine out of order, bucket already full in room, paper found inside bucket, guest left before checkout, no charge located. I remember the office feeling colder after I read that. Not because the air conditioner changed, because the words lined up too cleanly with things I already knew. 211, 214, ice machine out of order, bucket already full, paper inside, guest left before checkout. There was no guest name, but someone had attached a small printed photo to the back of the page. It was grainy, probably taken on an old phone. A motel table, a TV remote, a pale blue ice bucket sitting near the edge. Its handle was turned toward the camera, cracked on one side. I looked up from the file toward the storage room. Luis was at the counter checking a late arrival reservation. He had not noticed me stop typing. I took the complaint and walked to the storage room. The pale blue bucket was still on the top shelf. Dry, empty, exactly where Luis had put it. I held the photo beside it. Same color, same cloudy plastic, same cracked handle. I told myself there were probably hundreds of Motel ice buckets like that. The same supplier, the same old model, the same kind of damage. But the crack had a shape, a little branch splitting from the main break like a crooked Y. The photo had it too. I felt something sink in my chest. I went back to the counter and put the complaint down in front of Luis. He did not read it. He only glanced at the room numbers. Then he said, "Where did you find that?" "In the old complaint box." He rubbed one hand over his face. "Those were supposed to be tossed." "Why weren't they?" "Because nothing here stays tossed." I did not like that answer. I asked if our motel had ever had rooms in the 200s. Luis said no. I asked if Desert Belle had a sister property with a room 214. He said a lot of motels had room 214, not with that bucket. Luis looked at the photo then. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, he took the page, folded it once, and put it in his back pocket. I asked what he was doing, not putting it in the computer. Why? Because the system remembers things better than people do. That sounded ridiculous. Then again, I had already seen a vacant room play a Weather Channel voice from an unplugged TV. I asked what happened to the guest. Luis shrugged, but it was not a real shrug. Left. That's it. That's the best outcome. I stared at him. He lowered his voice. You need to understand something. Most of the time, it doesn't want people. It wants occupancy. I almost laughed because the word was too normal for the way he said it. Occupancy. A motel word. A business word. Rooms sold, rooms vacant, rooms dirty, rooms clean. I asked, what does that mean? Luis looked at the monitor. On the screen, the room grid sat perfectly still. Green boxes, yellow boxes, red boxes. He tapped one green square with his finger. It means an empty room is not always empty the same way. Before I could answer, the printer behind us clicked on. No one had sent anything to it. A single sheet fed through slowly. Luis closed his eyes before the page finished printing. I picked it up. At the top was the Desert Belle logo. Under it, one line, 214 occupied. I looked at the room grid. There was no 214. Our motel ran from 101 to 132. I said that out loud. Luis did not look at me. He only took the page from my hand and set it face down on the counter. Then the storage room door opened behind us. Just a few inches, no slam, no creak, only a small shift of air and the smell of cold plastic. I turned. From where I stood, I could see the top shelf inside. The pale blue bucket was no longer there. On the counter beside the printer, water began to drip. One drop, then another. I looked down. The bucket was sitting next to the keyboard, full of ice. Neither of us touched the bucket at first. It sat beside the keyboard, pale blue plastic beaded with water full of ice that should not have existed. The cracked handle leaned to one side. A thin stream ran down the front desk and dripped onto the rubber mat below. Luis stared at it like someone staring at a sleeping animal. Then he moved, fast. He grabbed the bucket with both hands, carried it through the basque door, and told me to stay at the counter. I did not listen. I followed him, just far enough to see him throw it into the dumpster behind the office. Not set it in. Throw it. The bucket hit the metal bottom with a hollow crack. Ice scattered. The sound echoed across the wet parking lot. Luis slammed the dumpster lid shut. Then he stood there in the rain for a moment with both hands on the lid, breathing hard. When he came back inside, he locked the back door and turned the deadbolt twice. Do we call someone? I asked. Number. That thing just appeared on the counter. No one comes for that. You keep saying things like they make sense. He looked older then, much older than he had looked at the start of the shift. Because if I say more, you'll do what everyone does? What's that? Try to understand it. I wanted to tell him I was already trying. I wanted to tell him he was not helping, but the printer clicked again before I could speak. Luis and I both turned. Another page slid out. Same motel logo, same single line. Room 214 occupied. Below it, this time a second line printed. Checkout 3:17 a.m. Luis took the page before I could. He folded it once and put it in the drawer under the register. Then he reached over and turned the printer off. The printer kept humming, not printing, just humming, like it was waiting. Luis unplugged it. The hum continued for 3 seconds after the cord came out of the wall, then stopped. I looked at the room grid on the monitor. Nothing had changed. 101 through 132. Number 214. No alert. No new reservation, no check-in. But on the camera feed, something flickered at the far end of the back row. I leaned closer. The back row was where we kept the rooms nobody wanted unless the front was full. 126 through 132, the storage closet, then the blocked-off maintenance door at the end. It was a dead stretch of walkway lit by one buzzing fixture and a security camera with a bad angle. On the screen between room 128 and the storage closet, there was a door. I had walked that row dozens of times. There was no door there. I said, "Luis, I see it." His voice was flat. The door on the screen had no number at first. Just a dark rectangle in the wall where beige stucco should have been. The image flickered. Static rolled across the feed. When it cleared, a number appeared on the door. 214. Not a metal plaque. Not motel numbers screwed into the wall. Blue handwriting, like marker on paper. The exact kind of blue handwriting from the complaint file. Luis reached for the monitor and turned it off. The screen went black. "Don't look at it through cameras," he said. "Why?" "Because cameras show it before it finishes being there." That was the first time I almost left. Not the bucket, not the printer, that sentence. I took my phone from my pocket, grabbed my jacket from the chair, and stepped back from the counter. Luis watched me. "You can go," he said, but he did not say it like permission. He said it like a warning. I looked through the office window at the parking lot. Rain ran down the glass. A pickup sat under the far light. A white sedan was parked near 105. The highway beyond the lot made a low, wet sound in the dark. I could leave. I had my car, my keys, my phone. The cash drawer was not my problem. The motel was not my problem. Whatever room 214 was, it was not my problem. Then a car pulled up to the night window. An older woman in a gray hoodie got out and came to the drawer under the glass. She looked exhausted. Behind her in the passenger seat, a teenage boy slept against the window. She needed a room, a real guest, a real person. Luis looked at me. "Check her in." I wanted to say no. Instead, I stepped back to the computer. That is how places keep you. They give you something ordinary to do at the exact moment you should run. I checked her ID, took her card, gave her room 107, told her where to park. My voice sounded normal. That scared me too. When she left, I looked at Luis. "We have to close the office." He shook his head. "If you close before the audit clears, the system will roll the room." "What room?" He did not answer. The office phone rang. No caller ID on the little screen. Luis let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it stopped. A second later, the phone in the storage room rang. There was no phone in the storage room. I had been in there. Towels, shelves, lost and found, old remotes, no phone. But the ringing came clearly through the closed door. Luis walked to the storage room and stood with his hand on the knob. "Don't," I said. He looked back at me. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. Not cautious, afraid. "It knows the office now," he said. The ringing stopped. Then from somewhere outside, the ice machine made one hollow clunk. Luis closed his eyes. Another clunk. Then another. The monitor was off, but the camera feed reflected faintly in the black screen from some internal glow. I could see the back row in it dim and warped. The door between 128 and the storage closet was still there. This time, the door was not closed. It had opened a few inches. On the counter, the cash drawer popped open by itself. Under the money tray was a paper key sleeve. I knew it had not been there before. Luis did not touch it, so I did. The sleeve was dry, white, cheap paper. On the front, in careful blue ink, someone had written 214. Inside was a key card, not one of ours. Ours had the Desert Bell logo in faded red. This card was plain white with a black magnetic strip. I set it down. Luis said, "Do not take that out there." "What happens if we don't?" He looked toward the back row, though there was no window facing it. "Then someone else will." That was when I understood why he had stayed so long at that motel. Not bravery, not loyalty, containment. A dirty little office, a room grid, a drawer full of cards, a night clerk who knew which doors not to open. He had been keeping guests away from the wrong vacancy, and now the wrong vacancy had printed itself a key. Luis reached for the sleeve. The office lights flickered once. When they steadied, he was holding nothing. The sleeve was gone. So was the key card. Outside at the far end of the back row, a door clicked open. Luis told me to stay in the office. He said it twice. The first time I almost listened. The second time I knew he did not expect me to. The door at the end of the back row had opened, not all the way. Just enough to show a narrow slice of darkness between room 128 and the storage closet where no door should have existed. Rain moved across the parking lot in thin silver lines. The buzzing light above the back row flickered every few seconds, making the whole walkway appear and disappear in pieces. Luis took the master keyring from the hook. His hands were steady now. That was worse than fear. "Lock the office behind me," he said. "No." He looked at me. "This is not training anymore. I know." I did not say the rest. That if he went alone and did not come back, I would be sitting in that office with a printer that printed impossible rooms, a storage room that rang without a phone, and a door that had already made its own key. Luis must have understood because he did not argue again. We stepped outside together. The rain was colder than it looked. It hit my face and ran down the back of my neck. The parking lot smelled like wet asphalt cigarette smoke, and that dry electrical smell old motel lights make when they are about to burn out. We passed room 124, then 126, then 128. I tried not to look at 128 too closely, but I noticed the curtains were shut even though that room had been out of order for repainting. A faint glow moved behind them, blue and slow, Weather Channel blue. Luis saw it too. He kept walking. The door between 128 and the storage closet had no metal number, only a paper sleeve taped to the center at eye level. The same cheap sleeve we used at the front desk. The number 214 was written across it in blue ink. Careful, small, almost neat. Luis stood in front of it and said, "Do not speak once we go in." I asked why. He looked at the door. Because rooms remember voices. Then he used the master key. It slid in too easily. The lock turned before he finished twisting. The door opened inward. Cold air came out. Not air-conditioned cold. Deeper than that. Like opening a cooler in a room that had been sealed for years. Luis aimed his flashlight inside. The room beyond was not part of the Desert Bell. That was the first thing I noticed. Our rooms had orange curtains, brown bedspreads, cheap black ice buckets, and framed desert prints over the beds. This room had beige walls, a crooked TV, a table near the dresser, and a comforter I did not recognize. It looked like a motel room from somewhere else, or several motel rooms arranged to agree with each other. The TV was on, Weather Channel, volume low. A fast food bag sat folded on the table. A white towel hung beside the sink, damp at the bottom. On the far wall behind the bed, there was a rectangular patch in the paint, rough edges, slightly smoother than the wall around it. I heard something behind that patch. Not a knock, not a cough, just the suggestion of breathing. Luis did not look at it. He kept the flashlight on the table. That was where the bucket sat. Pale blue plastic, cloudy with age. Handle cracked into that crooked Y shape, full of ice. The ice machine outside was still unplugged. I knew that because Luis had taped the cord down himself. Still, the bucket was full enough that cubes pressed against the lid from underneath. Water had begun to pool around the base, forming a perfect ring on the table. Beside it was a key sleeve, old paper, water stained at the corner. A number had been written on it, crossed out hard enough to tear the fibers. 211. Above it, in the same careful blue ink, someone had written 214. I did not need Luis to tell me what it meant. I remembered the complaint file. Guest assigned 211, key open 214. Ice machine out of order, bucket already full in room. Paper found inside bucket. Guest left before checkout, no charge located. Story report complaint, whatever name we gave it, it had not ended when that guest left. It had become part of the room. I stepped closer before I realized I was moving. Luis caught my sleeve. I stopped. Inside the bucket beneath the ice, there was a folded piece of paper. White, already wet at the edges. Luis shook his head once. Do not. But the room had already shown it to us. That felt like the point. Like ignoring it would not make it less ours. I lifted the lid. The ice shifted with a soft crack. The paper floated near the side. I took it out with 2 fingers. Cold water ran down my wrist. For a moment, I expected it to say 214. Or 211, or a guest name from the old complaint. It did not. It said front desk. I stared at those two words. The room was not calling a guest anymore. It was calling us. Behind me, the door clicked shut. Not slammed, not forced, just a gentle latch sound, like someone had closed it politely to give us privacy. Luis turned first. The door we had come through was still there, but the paper sleeve was gone. No knob, no deadbolt, no peephole, just a flat motel door painted beige on the inside. Luis put his hand against it. "Do not talk," he whispered. That was when the phone rang. I had not noticed the phone before. It sat on the nightstand beside the bed. Beige plastic, coiled cord, yellowed buttons. It rang again, sharp and ordinary. Luis did not move. I did. Not toward the phone, away from it. The ringing stopped. The TV volume rose slightly. A weatherman spoke through static about heavy overnight rain, low visibility, and drivers being advised to stay off the road. On the table, the fast food bag folded itself tighter, one crease, then another. The wall behind the bed coughed. Luis shut his eyes. I heard water running in the bathroom, then a toilet flushed. All the little wrong things from the other rooms. The towel, the wall, the bag, the checkout time, the wrong key. But they were not memories exactly. They were habits, room habits, things a space did after enough people left pieces of themselves behind. The alarm clock on the nightstand changed. It had been blank. Now red numbers glowed on the face. 3:17. Luis grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the bathroom. For 1 second, I thought he had lost his mind. Then I saw the bathroom window. There should not have been one. The bathroom wall was interior. It backed toward nothing that made sense. But there it was above the tub, small and high and painted shut. Luis took the flashlight and hit the glass with the metal end. Once. Twice. The glass cracked. From the main room, the phone rang again. This time it answered itself. The speaker clicked. A voice came through. Not male, not female, not one person. A layered motel voice made of front desks and tired guests and people trying not to sound afraid. Checkout is at 3:17. Luis hit the glass again. It broke inward. Cold rain came through. Real rain. Outside air. For the first time since we entered, I smelled asphalt instead of bleach. Luis shoved me toward the tub. "Go." I climbed onto the edge and pushed myself through the small window. Broken glass cut my forearm. My shoulder caught on the frame. For a terrible second, I thought the window was too small, that the room had given us an exit only to make us fail at using it. Then I fell onto wet gravel. I rolled onto my back and looked up. I was behind the motel, behind the actual building. Chain link fence, weeds, dumpster, rain, the real world. Luis came through after me harder and less cleanly. He hit the ground on one knee and cursed under his breath. The moment he landed, the window was gone. Not closed. Gone. Just beige stucco where it had been wet with rain. We stood there in the dark behind the motel, both of us breathing like we had run a mile. At the end of the building, the ice machine made one hollow clunk. Luis looked at me, then toward the office. The front desk printer was running. I could hear it from outside. We did not run to the office at first. For a few seconds, Luis and I just stood behind the motel in the rain, looking at the blank patch of stucco where the bathroom window had been. My arm was bleeding from the glass. Luis had one hand on his knee and the other pressed against the wall, like he expected the opening to come back if he found the right spot. It did not. There was only wet beige stucco, solid, flat, real enough to make the room we had just escaped from feel impossible. The printer inside the office kept running, not fast, one sheet at a time. Wire, pause, weir, pause. Luis straightened and wiped rain from his face. "Don't read them," he said, but he was already walking toward the back door. We went in through the office kitchen because Luis had the key. The room smelled like old coffee and wet uniforms. The front office beyond it looked almost normal, monitor on, room grid open, cash drawer closed, night window locked. The only wrong thing was the printer. A stack of papers had collected in the tray. Luis reached for them. I stopped him. I do not know why. Maybe because he had stopped me enough times that night, and this was the first time I saw him about to do the same stupid thing I would have done. He looked at my hand on his wrist. Then he let go. The printer pushed out one more page, then stopped. The silence after it felt worse than the noise. I picked up the top sheet. Desert Bell Motel, room 214, checked out. Guest name my name, checkout time, 3:17 a.m. I read it twice before my mind accepted the letters. My name was spelled correctly, first and last. The same name from my employee file. Same middle initial I never used unless a form required it. Under the checkout line there was a note. Guest left through bathroom window. I looked at Luis. His face had gone gray. You said it wanted occupancy, I said. He did not answer. I looked at the next page. Room 214, vacant dirty. Next page. Room 214, cleaning required. Next page. Room 214, do not rent. The final sheet had only one line. Front desk accepted room. I dropped the pages on the counter. Luis stepped back from them like they were hot. The monitor changed. I saw it happen. The room grid flickered. For a fraction of a second between 128 and the storage closet there was a new square. Not green, not yellow, not red. Blue, 214. Then the grid snapped back to normal. 101 through 132. Number 214. Luis turned off the monitor. This time the screen stayed off. He walked to the storage room and opened the door. I did not want to follow him, but I did. The top shelf was empty. No pale blue bucket, no water, no ice. Only folded towels, old remotes, and a cardboard box labeled Lost Chargers. Luis stood under the buzzing light and let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Not relief, something thinner. I asked how long he had known. He looked at the empty shelf. Known what? That there was a room. There isn't. I almost snapped at him, but he turned before I could. That's the point, he said. There is no room. There are only vacancies. I did not understand then. Not fully. I am not sure I do now. Luis quit that morning. I thought he was going to stay. I thought he was the kind of man who had made himself part of the place because no one else would hold the line. But when the sun came up, he took his jacket from the back office, handed me the manager's number, and said, "Tell him I'm done." "What about me?" I asked. He looked tired enough to disappear. "Leave before he asks you to stay." Then he walked across the parking lot, got into his old Chevy, and drove away. The manager arrived at 8:30. He did not believe me, or he pretended not to. I could not tell which was worse. He looked at my arm, which I had wrapped in paper towels. He looked at the stack of printed slips. He looked at the storage room shelf. He looked at the back row through the office window, where there was no door between 128 and the storage closet. Then he said Luis has always been dramatic. That was it, dramatic. I asked him about the blue square on the room grid. He said software glitches happened. I asked him about the printer. He said old hardware misfired. What is you want? I asked him about the bucket. He said guests left trash behind all the time. Every answer had the shape of reason and the weight of a lie. I quit before noon. I did not give notice. I did not ask for my last check. I did not clean out the drawer where I had kept 2 granola bars and a phone charger. I left the Desert Bell in daylight, with my arm bandaged and my shirt still damp from the rain. For a few months I did not stay in motels. Then life did what life does. It made my fear inconvenient. My car broke down outside Flagstaff during a long drive to visit my sister. The mechanic said the part would not arrive until morning. The chain hotel near the shop was full because of a youth baseball tournament. The only place with vacancy was a roadside motel 3 blocks away. I did not get a room. I told myself I would sleep in my car. But I went into the office to buy a bottle of water from the machine and ask if they knew a better hotel nearby. The woman at the desk was younger than me, college age maybe. She had earbuds in one ear and a textbook open beside the register. The office was bright, normal, too normal. Behind her on a shelf under the mail slots was a lost and found bin. Chargers, sunglasses, a child's shoe, an old TV remote, and 1 pale blue ice bucket, cloudy plastic, cracked handle, crooked Y-shaped split near one side. I stopped talking in the middle of my sentence. The clerk followed my eyes. "Oh," she said, "that thing." My mouth was too dry to answer. She picked it up like it was just another ugly motel object. It was empty, dry, ordinary. "That yours?" she asked. I shook my head. She looked at the bucket again and made a face. "Good, it keeps turning up." I left without the water. I slept in my car in the mechanic's lot, with the doors locked and the dome light on until the battery started to weaken. Before sunrise, I woke to the sound of ice. One hollow clunk, then another. There was no ice machine in the lot. Only cars, a closed garage, and the motel sign 3 blocks away glowing red over the roofs. I drove home as soon as the mechanic finished. I still drive long distances when I have to. I still pass motels. I still see vacancy signs flickering along highways and places where the dark begins before the town does. I do not think room 214 is a room. I think it is what happens when a room is waiting. Some rooms are cleaned. Some rooms are rented. Some rooms are marked vacant. But that does not mean they are empty. And if you ever walk into a motel room and feel like someone was there before you, do not touch what they left behind, because the next room might already know your name.